Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to Day 839 The News, and it's good to see you all once again, and we got some big news to cover today, and also the Russians are down in near Florida trying to get a look at our good beaches, and it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be making sure to cover the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and we have some significant news today as an attack has occurred on the outskirts of Moscow, leading to a significant fire that was captured on film, showing once again that Ukrainian drones are not only able to make their way throughout the entirety of Western Russia, but once again into the capital air defense perimeter, successfully hitting within the area of the city of Moscow. Not only that, but we also got major breaking news from the area around Kharkiv that Russian forces are continuing to take high losses. Not only that, a major 6th Combined Arms Army headquarters was stricken near the area of Shebekino, decapitating Russian command abilities for the 6th Army for a short while. We were also able to get major news out of the areas of Avdiivka and Bakhmut, showing that Ukrainian forces are continuing to inflict high losses on the Russian forces, and while they are advancing in marginal regions in the area of Avdiivka, this is in the result of a decent amount of losses. Not only that, but we also heard that the Ukrainians sank a Russian tugboat carrying a barge in the area of the Taganrog Gulf. We were also able to get the big news that an Su-34 fighter bomber has crashed in the area of North Ossetia within southern Russia. We have also heard that the Russian army has given orders to evacuate Crimea, meaning that Crimea is largely without any kind of air defense to speak of at the moment. The Ukrainians are attacking the Crimean Peninsula regularly now with ATACMS missiles. We are also hearing even larger news of major trembles and uproars in the west as a Russian fleet did arrive, or more so a flotilla, flotilla, if we really want to be accurate, arrived in the area of Havana, Cuba, and from what we understand, that flotilla may be somewhere along the eastern coast of Florida at this very moment, although we don't have the exact details and information about the whereabouts of that fleet in real time. But nevertheless,
it's actually that fleet's down there below Key Largo. At least about 5 or 6 hours ago, that's where it was, right down there off the bottom coast of Florida. So it's pretty close.
And so with that, it is now time for us to get on into all of the breaking news that we have tonight. Of course, we're going to cover everything that we just talked about with the breaking news headlines, but then we're also going to be breaking it down into the exact details and the nitty-gritty, especially when we get to the frontline analysis and showing you all of the clips and smaller details that have happened throughout the course of the day. But it is an absolutely insane day of news coverage. But moving on into the area of the city of Moscow, our first major news of the day, we were able to see that explosions did occur within the area of Moscow, and that apparently vehicles caught on fire as a result of these explosions. We do not know exactly how this attack made it through the Moscow air defense perimeter. It appears that it was done completely without any kind of preemptive warning, as the explosions occurred and then filming began. We do not know what kind of drones the Ukrainians used to be able to breach the air defense perimeter, and not only that, caused such little, I guess you could say, conspicuousness of the drone attack that cameras only started to roll after the attack had commenced. But we are able to see here a car on fire and several other cars on fire in a different area of Moscow. And once again, the view from the apartment building. At this moment, once again, we have absolutely no idea of the kind of drone that was used on this attack. And another interesting fact of the matter is that this is a very similar kind of an attack that we saw to the one that occurred down at the area of the Avdiivka airfield, which led to the loss of 2 Russian Su-57 Felon air superiority fighters. Down at Avdiivka and inside of Moscow, reports of the drone attacks came out after the drones had impacted the ground. No air defense was active either in Avdiivka or around the Moscow air defense perimeter when these drones moved into the city and ended up hitting several different targets. At the exact same time, a very interesting comparison about these attacks is that, from what we understand, the Russians are making it quite clear they are not able to see whatever kind of weapon the Ukrainians are using against them at this moment, possibly suggesting that either these drones are very quiet, therefore no one ever hears them flying over, and they may also be low visibility on radar as well. Although we don't really know that for certain, those are 2 things that could be made as logical assumptions, as we're now seeing that longer range Ukrainian drone attacks either have no forewarning, or even at that, the Russians don't really seem to be responding with air defense at all, possibly showing that they're getting no heads up whether a drone is on its way to a target, or if they can even audibly hear it to know where the drone may be directly above them in their line of sight to be able to fire at it. We're going to be trying to find more information, if we possibly can, about the Avdiivka and Moscow attacks by the Ukrainians, because at the moment, we don't have a lot of technical information about the drones used. We would usually assume that with the range of these strikes, that these would be Liudi long-range kamikaze drones of the Ukrainian armed forces. But at the same time, we've always seen that Liudi drones have been detected and filmed, and air defense has been active in almost every single Liudi attack. This is leading us to believe that this is a new kind of drone that has just been introduced onto the battlefield, and that the attacks at Avdiivka and Moscow may be similarly related to each other. But moving on from that and into the area of North Ossetia, we also got to hear that apparently an Su-34 fighter bomber crashed in the area just north of the Georgian border. From the information that we have, we were able to get just the statements of this today from the Russian government, as well as other sources. The Su-34 crashed, and both pilots, the pilot and the co-pilot, were both lost in the subsequent flames and fire that began to eat up the crash site after it rammed practically into the side of a mountain in the area. North Ossetia is not South Ossetia. South Ossetia is the illegitimate, unrecognized, semi-autonomous republic within Georgia that was created by Russian influence in the invasion of Georgia in 2008. North Ossetia is directly north of South Ossetia, meaning that this aircraft crashed inside of the Russian Federation, not inside of an illegally occupied area of Georgia. We do not know why the aircraft crashed. It may have been pilot error, it may have been poor aircraft maintenance, it may have been, much like the President Ibrahim Raisi of Iran died, that they were flying in low cloud visibility or poor visibility conditions and ended up colliding with the side of a mountain. We're not entirely sure of the exact details of this crash at the moment, but another $40 million airframe was lost. Not only that, but the Su-34s are one of the few competent aircraft within the Russian Air Force that have been used for air-to-ground roles inside of Ukraine and conducting air-to-ground sorties. It is something that the Russian Federation is not necessarily too capable of. Much like the Chinese, from what we understand, the Army and the Air Force do not have the most interconnected communication system in between the Army's needs and the Air Force's given abilities in any specific area. So for the large part, the Russian Federation decides to use their aircraft in a more strategic approach, trying to attack larger facilities behind the lines or attack predetermined locations that are a little bit farther away from the active front line, considering that they do not have the proper prerequisite communications to be able to know where friendly and enemy forces would be at any given moment on the ground. The Su-34s are one of the few aircraft that really do exceed or excel in this strategic air operations role, and considering that another one of them has been lost in the area of North Ossetia, it does show that the Russian Air Force is once again becoming a little bit harder pressed for good aircraft or usable aircraft for that matter. Meanwhile, out of Russia, and on the other side of the world, just off of the coast where the Enforcer HQ is, which is in Birmingham, Alabama, here in the southeastern United States, a small Russian flotilla arrived yesterday in the port of Havana, Cuba. This flotilla consists of a Russian frigate, a submarine, an auxiliary vessel, and one tugboat. The tugboat is most likely there just in case if one of the vessels breaks down. That's probably the real honest answer. That we usually see that a tugboat, well, actually several tugboats, are employed whenever the Admiral Kuznetsov, which is the Russian Kuznetsov class aircraft carrier, is underway, because the Admiral Kuznetsov actually cannot operate under its own power, interestingly enough. But beyond that, moving on from that, we were able to see that these vessels arrived in Cuba. And we were able to get a little bit of a video right here of the Admiral Gorshkov arriving. The Admiral Gorshkov is a Gorshkov-class frigate, and the Russians made it very clear in their press statements about this vessel arriving in Havana that it was Zircon hypersonic missile capable, trying to bring forward the fear to the American public that this ship could start firing missiles that would easily make it through U.S. air defense and start striking targets within America, really trying to instill fear in the American public, and that fear would get into the decision-making cycles of U.S. leaders and start to make them a little bit more apprehensive about dealing with the Russians. At least that's
Is that really how the port of Havana looks like in the modern day? Because that's like a little bit nicer than I thought it was going to look, to be honest.
Well, yeah, it's how it kind of looks. But let me see if I can get you some actual pictures of Havana Harbor. Maybe this one will be a good one, because it looks all right, because it's mostly
surprisingly nice.
But this is the capital city, though, and also you can already see some buildings are crumbling, like this one here. And this one here. So it's kind of a bit of a facade, because most of this was built during the time of Spanish colonization of the island. Then after the Spanish Civil War, the country was economically prosperous and maintained these buildings a great deal. But ever since the Communist Revolution and Fidel Castro came into power, things have not been that well economically for the Cubans. I believe that we can find a area. Yeah, we can actually go to San Jose de las Lajas and go take a look around here. This is what normal Cuba looks like for the most part. So you can see that it's not really that nice. Yeah, because because Matthew's like, oh, that doesn't look that bad. And yeah, downtown Havana near the harbor doesn't look that bad, but it's kind of the same thing with Russia, or they show you Moscow City and it's like, wow, look, Russia looks better than America, and then you go out anywhere outside of Moscow City and it looks like a slum. This is
it's really like mirroring Russia, really, like you were saying. It's like out here, honestly, this kind of looks worse than like the rural Russia, really. This looks worse in my opinion. But just like good old communist countries love to do, make the capital look like a nice big facade, just like North Korea, Russia, and the rest of them. And then the people out here live terribly. And also, is it true they barely have any cars here in Cuba as well?
Yes, because of all the sanctions, they haven't really been able to get in parts to replace rundown parts on the older cars. So cars are becoming fewer and fewer in Cuba. But look, this is the downtown of a city that's not that far out of Havana. Just to give you all a little bit of an idea of what Cuba really looks like. I don't want anyone to be under a misconception that Cuba's a nice place. But beyond that, The vessels did arrive in Havana, and then overnight, after they had what we can only assume to be a very short visit within Havana port, which we can see right here, they then immediately set sail back out of Havana port, began to move around the Keys, and now, right now, they're somewhere around Key Largo. And let me make sure to put that on the map. Well, that was their last reported location as of 5 to 6 hours ago. But here is Key Largo right here. They're somewhere around this area, and they're currently, from what we would assume, moving northwards through international waters, past the Florida coast, and on into their way into the rest of the North Atlantic, most likely towards the area of the northern Floridian coast or the northern Georgian coast, although we are assuming that they're not traveling at great speed. They're most likely traveling at slower speeds, considering, I believe, that the auxiliary vessel is with them, and the auxiliary vessel is not able to travel at breakneck speeds like the frigate or the fast attack submarine can. But beyond that, it is an interesting bit of info, and really quickly to get us to our profile, I believe that we have a few updates on the vessel's whereabouts here on our Twitter. And so let me see.
Yes, the last known location of the vessels, I believe it was when they were making their way down toward Cuba. I think, I'm not sure though, but they were last seen about, looks like maybe 100 miles off the bottom coast of Florida, right off of Key Largo. There was a P-8 Poseidon and also a stratotanker circling above the area. There was a whole fleet of ships, and also, by the way, not only was the Navy also surveilling it from the air, we also had the U.S. Coast Guard ship. I believe it was the Cutter Stone was down there as well. It was actually with the flotilla, so it was monitoring them from the Atlantic all the way down to the bottom of the Florida coast. So the entire time that Russian flotilla was here, like you see in the picture, it was being monitored from also the sea and also the sky as well. So they weren't just like roaming around on their own, they were being watched.
And from what we can understand, there's actually a pretty decent amount of Western vessels that have surrounded this flotilla as they're traveling around the area of Key Largo. Apparently, according to the information that some people have been giving, pretty much just great OSINT detail in the comment sections of these Twitter posts, this is apparently a Canadian frigate, most likely, His Majesty's Canadian ship, the Ville de Quebec. Which is right here in this picture, escorting the Russian vessels off in the distance, and that may be the Russian auxiliary vessel. Honestly, though, this looks more so like the Admiral Gorsky, in my honest opinion, more so than any kind of a Canadian vessel. And apparently this picture was actually taken from, if I remember correctly,
a cruise ship.
Yeah, a cruise ship that was in the area, which is pretty interesting to see that they're pretty much conflicting the areas of the waters that they're in. And once again, it is showing that most likely nothing serious will happen, because to start opening fire or begin a full-on war with one frigate and one submarine in heavily populated commercial waters, that would be a pretty tough stretch, even for the Russian Navy. And not only that, you have to remember that there is not a lot of support for this small fleet, if you want to call it a fleet. I call it a flotilla, because a flotilla is a step down from a fleet in size. Actually, I believe it's a few steps down. But beyond that, this is not anything to be that concerned about. And let me quickly explain the psyche behind why the Russians are doing this and why they hope that a lot of people are paying attention. Because Matthew and me were actually having a bit of a discussion before the stream as to whether we would even talk about this at all or not on this channel. And I was really of the belief that we wouldn't, and that's why I'm not really going to give it that much airtime, and I'll explain why. There are several ways that Russia and China attempt to sway America or move American decision making in different directions. And one of those ways is what is called low-level coercion, which is where they start to imply the threat of military force, whether it be a serious, viable threat on a strategic level. It does not matter. It's just the threat of military force being used can start to cause a decent amount of panic and fear in the public. And because of that palpable panic and fear in the public, it can start to sway U.S. governmental leaders, like, for example, the office of the president or members of Congress, to start getting more cold feet about what's going on with Ukraine, because now it looks like Russian weapons are not that far from the United States. And not only that, they could fire at any moment. And of course, with the Russians saying that both of these systems, the submarine and the frigate, are Zircon missile capable, they're trying to insinuate that there would be absolutely no defense to these ships right now if they fired. They're pretty much wanting the American public, especially here in the U.S. Southeast, to believe that we would be completely defenseless against the Russian Federation Federation, just the one frigate and one submarine that is down there. And that is the exact thing that they want to feed into. That's why the Russians really love it when major news channels, or even us on the YouTube level, begin to report about this kind of stuff, because it really feeds into the kind of pandemonium or fear, or really the attention that they want this action to get in the public here in America. Because it could start to make people scared, it could start to make them say, maybe we need to back off on Ukraine. And that's exactly what they want. That's what low-level coercion attempts to seek, is creating enough fear of military action in the minds of their adversaries that they would decide to back off and possibly go down a route of appeasement to avoid an immediate conflict. That's exactly what they're going for right here. And of course, many people are going to be like, well, it's just one frigate and one submarine. Obviously, that's not going to be what they use to start off a whole war, considering that frigate and submarine will be completely alone in the Gulf of Mexico and down in the area of the Bahamas. That doesn't matter. The public in America most likely does not know that. What they are hearing right now on mainstream news is that a Russian fleet, because the mainstream news isn't calling it a flotilla and is not downplaying the seriousness of just one ship and one submarine being in the area. They are calling it a Russian fleet is off the coast of Florida right now, and they are directly threatening the U.S. Southeast is what they're saying. And when you really know the exact details and information on these vessels, the lack of logistical support that they have, and the fact that they're thousands of miles away from the Russian Federation, meaning that any kind of viable support or supply efforts would be completely moot, considering that they'd also had to pass through a load of NATO countries' waters, or around NATO's countries' waters, and through the Iceland-UK gap to try and make it to these vessels and then support their efforts. This is nothing more than a smoke and mirror show being put up by the Russians to feed into public fear here in America. But
I'll be honest, I really haven't seen the mainstream media talking about this too much, to be honest. And really, I've seen a lot of people in the chat, they're saying that they hadn't heard about this until just now. And honestly, to me, I don't take this whole new situation as necessarily causing fear in the United States. To me, I think it's going to have the opposite effect. To me, it makes me sort of pissed off and angry that Russia is literally taking their warships right down the side coast of Florida, and they think that there's going to be no repercussions for it. There probably honestly won't be, but honestly, it does make me a little bit angry that they're doing that, considering that we're simply helping out a sovereign country defend themselves, and Russia feels compelled to come over here and try to teach us a lesson, or at least that's their ideology behind it. So, especially it's in Florida as well, they're Southerners. So I think they're going to get a little bit angry over the whole situation and get hostile instead of get scared or fearful.
And I would believe that's most likely so. But then again, Matthew, we do have to understand that there has been a lot of psychological warfare operations that are always being conducted by the United States in softer forms by both the Chinese and the Russians. And a lot of people believe that the U.S. is so weak right now that the Russians could literally just walk into Washington, D.C., kick the president over, and then sit in the Oval Office and begin commanding the country. It's the same with the Chinese. They also believe they can do the same thing. And going off of that, you have to remember that they are already working on a pretty advantageous field as far as the public mindset goes in America. And, and of course, we're not going to get into politics with that, but I don't hear a lot of people on either side these days in the United States saying that America is a strong country that can hold its own in the world. Everyone in America largely believes at this point, it seems like the large majority do, that America is a weak country that is only going to be around for the ebbs and flows, or really the winds, to carry us around, and the Russians and the Chinese are really the ones that set the course. That's at least what a lot of people would think, which is completely untrue if you know the reality of the situation, but that's what some people would think. And going off of that, just this Russian flotilla being in the area alone could set a lot of those people over the tipping edge and make them go, wait, we don't need to support Ukraine. They're almost about to start a war with us right here. Like, for example, you know that one YouTube channel, Matthew, that's already put out the emergency alert,
Oh, yeah. They scheduled it.
Yeah, I mean, there's people like that out there, and they're going to make it sound like the world is going to end from one small frigate and one fast attack submarine, which is not the case, but nevertheless, that's what the Russians are aiming to do. And a lot of people have been talking about that with this flotilla just passing the east coast of Florida today, down in the southern area. And a lot of people are wondering, is Russia trying to intimidate the United States? Clearly, to me, it seems so. And it would, of course, look like on a diplomatic playbook that this is exactly something you would do if you were attempting low-level conversion. Well, not conversion, but coercion. But some people are saying, well, a lot of people are saying that Russia does hope to intimidate. Some people are saying that Russia is only on a mission to Cuba, possibly to supply them with weapons for future diplomatic maneuvers in the future. Others are also saying that it's likely so, but they need more intel before they come up with a decision, and others are undecided on this matter completely, but nevertheless see the severity of the situation. They just don't really know what to make of it yet. But Matthew, what are you thinking about this Russian flotilla? What are its actual aims in the area of the South Florida coast? And not only that, what are a lot of people thinking about that as well, with the flotilla's aims and objectives?
So it looks like about 70% of the audience believes that Russia's main hope is to intimidate the U.S. citizens, while 15% said no, it's more like Russia simply on a mission to Cuba to supply weapons, and 8% said, likely so, but I need more intel. And on this one, I would definitely say that Russia, their original hope was that they were going to intimidate the United States. That's why they took that path along the eastern seaboard of the United States. They were hoping to go along the side of it to get the most news coverage possible in the hopes of intimidating people. But like I said a moment ago, I don't think that's going to be the actual effect of it. I think it's going to do the quite opposite. So I think that's going to fail on that front. But also secondarily, I do believe that Russia is also on a mission to Cuba. I've heard some unconfirmed reports coming out of Russia from their state media, and also take that with a grain of salt because it is their state media after all. But it sounds like Putin might have some hopes or ambitions to maybe arm Cuba with some type of weaponry. And I'm not going to speculate on which type it may be, but he is trying to sort of toss that idea around a little bit, which is concerning. So it's a bit of a mixture of both, but mainly to intimidate. And also, one more thing as well. I saw a ton of people earlier today on Twitter trying to spread around a news story saying that the Canadians and also the Russians got into a confrontation down there off the coast of Florida. From what I can tell, that is simply not true. That seems to be something that somebody made up because I couldn't get any corroboration for it whatsoever. So the Canadians and the Russians apparently just passed by each other, and that was the end of it, and sort of mirrored each other, and there was nothing else that came out of it. Just wanted to clear that up real quick because I see there's a thing in the chat here. Let's see. My mic is super loud. Unfortunately, you might have to turn that down on your end, so I'm not sure how to turn it down.
There's nothing I can do. It actually sounds like you're eating your mic right now, and I'm seeing some people saying that in the chat.
Oh no.
Like, it's extremely loud. Like, I was turning down the volume on my headset over here, and you were still extremely loud. I was like, if I turn it down any lower, we're not going to be able to hear clips. But with that, I hope we addressed that well, because in my honest opinion, I do believe that the Russians are only hoping to intimidate. Of course, it's a flotilla. It's not a fleet. Not only that, the Russians do not have any kind of long-arm logistical abilities for the Navy to allow them to operate anywhere near America's coastline. So this is nothing more than really a show by the Russians to try and make the American public in a larger amount of fear, more so than normal. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into Germany for a quick moment, because we actually got some pretty interesting news that a Lynx armored fighting vehicle, this vehicle right here, pretty impressive looking by the way, will actually be manufactured by Rheinmetall for Ukraine. The production will begin this year as the Lynx joins the CV90 from Sweden, the Rosimak from Poland, and the Bradleys from the United States as Ukraine's most modern infantry fighting vehicles. The German Rheinmetall Lynx, I don't really know much about in particular, but let me go pull it up, the Lynx IFV. And let me go see if we can get any details about this vehicle. So it appears that it was designed in 2015. It is made by Rheinmetall, but specifically, this system ends up being used by the Hungarian army, which is actually a little interesting. But here's a picture of a Lynx in service with the Hungarian army, and it appears that its armament is somewhat standard. It has a 35mm Wutan Schwerly bird, or something along those lines, and it also has the KF-41 turret, which is fairly standard. It has steel armor with various appliques, which is a little interesting considering that the Bradley's armor, I believe, is actually made of aluminum. This one being made of steel, I'm assuming that it probably would end up being a little bit heavier, and it is. This thing ends up weighing 34 to 50 tons, which is about the weight of a Soviet main battle tank before an infantry fighting vehicle. So this thing is pretty well armored or incredibly heavy. Not only that, it is able to get up to a maximum speed of 65 to 70 kilometers per hour. So for the weight of the thing, it actually is incredibly mobile. But nevertheless, Rheinmetall is planning on manufacturing these vehicles specifically for the Ukrainian market. We're not really sure if the Ukrainians are going to have to purchase these things or if they're going to have to end up possibly just getting them, being lended them by the German government, because it doesn't seem as though, according to OSINT Technical, there's any specific information about a wish of the German government to provide a endless supply of these. So this may be an independent venture by Rheinmetall as a profit-making venture.
It says over there in the comment on OSINT Technical, it says Ukraine is dependent on financial support from the German government for the production. So it looks like that may be what they're waiting for.
There we go. So it looks as though the Germans are actually, on a governmental level, supporting the project and helping them out. But moving on from that little bit of news and on into our next bit outside of Germany, it's now time for us to move on into the area of Sevastopol, where we got to hear yesterday the major breaking news that apparently the Russian army is being ordered to evacuate in large part out of the entirety of Crimea. When I say this, and some people want to go, "Oh man, it's clickbait," and of course because they're too busy in a cloud of crack smoke to really pay attention. The Russian army largely has really no armed forces on the army level inside of Crimea. There are some, I believe there is 1 or 2 Russian army divisions inside of Crimea, which makes up about 6,000 manpower total for the Russian army in Crimea. Any other manpower that's in Crimea currently is transient, meaning that it's moving from one area of Russia to the next, so those numbers are not accounted for. There's about 2 divisions of strength inside of the area, and that's it. And so going off of that, you can get an idea that there isn't really a lot of Russian forces inside of Crimea. Now, one of those entire divisions is specifically focused on providing air defense to Crimea, and that's really the entirety of the issue, is that most of that army manpower in Crimea is specifically pertaining to air defense of the Navy and Air Force assets that are inside of the peninsula. So when, in order for that entire division to evacuate the peninsula, or really they reissued their orders and they move out of the peninsula, and then their family members are told to evacuate from the peninsula, that pretty much means, in large part, most of the Russian army just packed up and left Crimea. And that is the information that we got just yesterday. The Russian forces were ordered by the Russian Federation, according to Atesh, which is a partisan movement within Crimea, that they will be moving the Russian Armed Forces Air Defense servicemen in Crimea to the area of Belgorod, most likely to reinforce air defenses in an incredibly weakened area of the Russian frontier. We were also able to hear additional information as well, that the air defense is being moved to Belgorod. We were able to get further confirmation for that later, and the order has been given to evacuate the families of the service members that were currently in Crimea. And according to a direct statement from the partisans, this development coincides with the transfer of air defense systems to the Belgorod region, which poses a threat to the security of Crimea. Going off of this, we do understand that the Russian Federation most likely has no intention of deploying any large numbers of air forces or naval forces into the area of the Crimean Peninsula going on from this point forward. While it would be entirely possible, it would be an act of sheer incompetence and a complete folly on the end of the Russians, as putting air forces and naval assets into the area of Crimea without any proper air defense is begging for incredibly high losses, not only for the Russian Navy, but for the Russian Air Force as well. This is also showing a major shift in Russian priorities, as they are now starting to move their major air defense systems in the form of the S-300s, S-400s, the Tor M1s, and the multiple other forms of SAM batteries that they have, are moved from an area of occupied Ukraine and into the area of Belgorod, specifically along the Russian frontier. This is once again showing us that the Russians are starting to consider the Russian heartland far more important than the Russian areas in occupied Ukraine, such as the Crimean Peninsula. But nevertheless, this is major news and will be showing that the strategic significance of Crimea is practically all but gone at this point in the war. We will most likely see that the remainder of the Russian Navy in Sevastopol will slowly be relocated to Novorossiysk, and not only that, Russian Air Force assets will most likely be further deployed along the areas of the Rostov-on-Don Oblast, the Voronezh Oblast, the Belgorod Oblast, and the Kursk Oblast to conduct further air operations against Ukraine, considering that they will have a complete lack of an air defense umbrella inside of the peninsula. But with that, we also got to hear at that exact same time that ATACMS missile attacks, from what we understand, these were the last that we've heard of, and maybe the last on the peninsula targeting air defense, and Attackham's attack was launched from the area around Mykolaiv, and 12 Attackham's missiles were launched and were fired into the areas of Chornomorsk, Yevpatoria, and Dzhankoye, attempting to target radar installations and air defense launch sites for the surface-to-air missile systems. This attack happened just 3 hours after the evacuation orders were given. We do not have any information to show the success of this attack, even 24 hours later, because at the moment, we just get nothing. It is pretty much just dead space out there about what happened as a result of this attack. It may have been that it was unsuccessful and Russian air defense batteries were already on the move and leaving the peninsula by this point, but to be quite honest, from the point of orders issued to the actual execution of those orders, for such a large apparatus as an entire air defense battery, we would have to suppose that they would still be in this area by the time these missiles impacted their target sites. So we still do not have any exact information about the damage, but that may be coming out in the next day or two if there was any damage that was actually caused. But nevertheless, showing that Crimea has become a death trap for the Russian forces. Moving on from that bit of news even, and on into another interesting bit, we did get to see a Ukrainian S-300 system engaging targets within the southern aerial command area, and here is the clip. And we're going to be muting the music, but we can see the S-300 launch and fire.
Man, that's a fast missile.
Oh, it is. And that's the end of the clip, but still showing a Ukrainian S-300 system in operation. Moving on from that and on into our next bit of news, we also got a little bit of interesting detail from the area of Kharkiv, and we were able to get something that was actually unbelievable when the news came out, but it was further confirmed over the course of today that the information was in fact completely true. But a lot of people have been saying about the Crimean situation that they don't really know if it is really just Russia shifting its priorities, or if the Ukrainians have larger plans for the oblast, or really the peninsula, and the Russians are reacting to it before it happens. Some people are wondering what in the world will this result in, and some people say that Ukraine likely has plans to invade the peninsula soon. Some people are saying that Russia must protect Belgorod instead, considering its priority. Others are saying that they're unsure and undecided, and some people are saying that the Russians just don't want Crimea, but that is an incredibly small amount of people. But beyond that, Matthew, what are people saying about this, and what are you thinking about it?
So it looks like a lot of people in the audience are very conflicted about this poll. It looks like about 44% said Ukraine likely has plans to invade soon, while 39% said Russia must protect Belgorod instead, and that's why they're moving out of Crimea, or at least some of the soldiers' families. And it looks like only 2% said, Russia really just doesn't want Crimea. And I would say that we can probably rule that one out. Russia does want Crimea, but I don't think they have the manpower to really protect it. And I'm with the 39%. I think Russia is moving some of the stuff out to Belgorod or Belgorod, whatever you want to call it, to protect that place instead, because that's where currently the major attacks are happening by Ukraine. And I'm not sure if that's part of the Ukrainian plan to maybe distract the Russians from Crimea, so that way they can later blitz it. That could be one of the strategies right there. But nonetheless, Russia simply does not have enough equipment nor soldiers to protect the entirety of Crimea plus their mainland. That's been proven during the Wagner offensive that happened a while back. Russia simply doesn't have it. So I'm with the 38%, but Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would have to disagree with the 45% that say that Ukraine has plans to invade soon, because there's currently a large buffer area in between the active front lines in Kherson and Zaporizhia and the peninsula of Crimea itself. An evacuation order like that would be given if the Ukrainians were in the area of Armyansk or the Chandar Gap, meaning that they would be directly on the border of the peninsula, and Russian forces such as air defense forces of a strategic sort would be under direct threat of direct fire from the Ukrainian front lines at that point. Considering that, they would then start to give the order to evacuate. So this would be a little bit too precautionary for a possible invasion that the Ukrainians would conduct of the peninsula. I would say that I would have to agree with the 38% of y'all who said that the Russians must protect Belgorod instead. At the moment, the Russians are starting to run critically low on air defense systems, and that is something that we've just easily known for most of the war, especially over the past 8 months, is that the air defense systems are running out and are getting less and less in number as time keeps rolling by. And a lot of people are starting to see, and we're starting to see, that the Russians are beginning to prioritize what is the most important for air defense to be used around. And it seems as though that the Russians are starting to make the decision that the mainland is far more important. Insulating the Russian public from the realities of the war that's been created would most likely be imperative, considering that Belgorod is under a heavy bombardment almost day and night at this point by Ukrainian forces targeting military infrastructure around the city. That is most likely what the air defense is being moved to counter, is that endless amount of fire that the Ukrainians are sending across the border, and really starting to give the Russians an idea that the war may not be going that well, and they may not be succeeding too much. And so going off of that, I would say that it's certainly to protect Belgorod, and also others are saying, well, if they love Crimea so much, why will they leave it completely defenseless? Because the Russians are most likely going to reorganize their strategies going forward to really change how the war is fought. Crimea is not strategically important in reality over the course of this war. It's strategically important for the Russians post-war, and that's really what the entire conflict is being fought for, is so that way they can make sure that they can keep the peninsula post-war and then continue to use it to base the Russian Black Sea Fleet, and the Russian Black Sea Fleet can then power project for the Russian Federation within the area of the Eastern Mediterranean along the Middle East. That is really the whole point, that they are fighting the war in the long run. If you go back to everything, even back to 2014, the first thing that the Russians annexed and stole from Ukraine was the Crimean Peninsula. That's what they were doing this entire thing for. So going off of that, we know that Crimea is important, but it's not important over the course of this war. Russian naval assets are not valuable in this war either. We have clearly seen that, as they have not really produced any positive results for the Russian invasion, and not only that, they've taken incredibly high losses as well. So insulating and protecting the fleet is a higher priority than keeping them combat ready. And for that reason, the entire Black Sea Fleet could be removed from Sevastopol and moved into the area of Novorossiysk without that much of a change in how the war is actually evolving, rather than a positive in reality for the Russians, which is that they would be taking far less ship losses over the remainder of the war. Not only that, but the Russian air forces in this region are really only operating in the area around Kherson. That is the only reason that the Russian Air Force has to operate from the area of the Crimean Peninsula. Beyond that, they could operate from the areas around Yesk, or from the area around the village, and let me make sure that I get the name right, Novosherbinovskaya is the correct name for that, which they could operate from and continue to conduct sorties inside of the Zaporizhia area. It's just that Kherson would no longer be provided any kind of air support, and not only that, would not have any air defense either. However, the Russians do have a reason to be able to say that that kind of a risk would come with at least some kind of a buffer or a barrier to protect them from any kind of bad decision-making in that role. The Ukrainians and the Russians in this area are geographically divided by the Dnipro River Marsh, which is a significant marsh, and to be quite honest, watching Ukrainian actions in this area, it would be highly unlikely here within the near future that the Ukrainians would be able to cross this river successfully and field a large enough amount of manpower and resources to conduct a successful offensive in the southern area of the Zaporizhia Oblast, meaning that the Russians could strip their forces in this area of air defense and air support, and it wouldn't really result in a major change in the conditions of this front line. Not only that, but the Russians are also in the same gridlock that the Ukrainians are in. They can't really cross the marsh either to the other side to try and conduct an offensive to retake Kherson and begin the march back towards Mykolaiv. So this entire front line in this area is largely dead weight and is really at a stalemate at this point due to the massive natural obstacle of the Dnipro River and marsh that exists within this area. So going off of that, we can understand that this move in Crimea is probably being made off of that decision-making process. Why put air defense and air support in an area that won't really need it? Let's move it to Belgorod instead, where it would be usable against the Ukrainians, which are now pushing back our offensive across the border, and that possibly will buy them time or stagnate that front line to where the Russians at least could have the claim that they're still inside of the Kharkiv Oblast, and they're still creating some sort of a sanitary zone, although in reality they wouldn't be. They could sell it, however, like that on a propaganda level to the public. So with that, I hope that does address at least my look at this, or my lens of this, as best as I can, and why the Russians are most likely stripping Crimea of really all military assets, not just the air defense, but here soon the Air Force and the Navy, as a result of a lack of air defense. But with that, I hope we address that well, and it's now time for us to move on into the area of Vovchansk. But before we do, there are a couple of questions that I'd like to answer. And Matthew, what do we got?
And we've got some very juicy questions tonight. And the first one goes to Sergeant Carnage, who is a longtime channel legend. And thank you very much, Sergeant Carnage, for the massive $50 support. Very generous, and thank you very much for helping to keep the work running. He says, question from the chat.
And thank you so much for that unbelievable support, Sergeant Carnage. You're helping this channel to be possible. You really are. And I got to thank you for being the Sergeant of Carnage on this channel. Absolutely slicing up them hams, them schnitzels. But beyond that, Matthew, he wanted a live chat, and we got to give him a live chat. Sponsored by Sergeant Carnage. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so this live chat question is going to go to Howard Turgell, who says, if Cuba does get armed, what part of the USA can be seen as a legitimate target?
Most likely the United States Southeast, if Cuba was supplied with Russian weapons. The Russians will most likely not be providing intercontinental, intermediate range, or short range ballistic missiles that are nuclear capable and armed with nuclear warheads to the Cubans. The Russians would most likely have to base forces inside of Cuba. At the moment, we understand that those forces would have absolutely no support from the Russian Federation, as once again, much like we were talking about with the Navy earlier, there really is not a supply chain for the Russian Navy. They do not have that large an amount of auxiliary vessels that would be able to keep up a steady stream of supplies and support to Russian forces that would be based in Cuba to man these nuclear weapons. And so then the only other option is to give them to the Cubans. And the Russians are certainly not going to be giving them to the Cubans, because then, much like we were talking with the Belarusians, how do they get them back? There's no way to get them back. Once you give them a nuclear weapon, they could just threaten to nuke you if you try and get the nukes back. And the Russians most likely don't want to just hand away a free nuke. So going off of that, there isn't really a lot of threat of a nuclear attack coming from Cuba. If anyone tells you that, I just stop watching their channel, because the chances of that happening are very slim. I mean, incredibly. If someone is saying that it is the majority chance, like saying 90% chance, that person is saying stuff to get views. If they say it's a low chance, like an incredibly low chance, like a 1 to maybe 3% chance, which is what I'm going with, that's a more realistic outlook on the provision of nuclear weapons to Cuba, either being manned by Russian forces in Cuba or being operated by the Cubans and given to them by the Russians. In reality, if anything was going to be based in Cuba, it most likely would be Russian forces that would be operating things like Iskander missiles, or maybe Zircon hypersonic missiles. Although I'm doubting that a little bit. Usually the Kinzhal hypersonic missile, which is the one that the Russians field the most currently in Ukraine, has to be air-launched by a specially made MiG-31 called the MiG-31K. And let me show y'all what that MiG looks like currently. So MiG-31K, and here we go. This is just your standard MiG-31 right here. This is not a MiG-31K, which is the one that's made specifically to carry a Kinzhal, but this is the specific aircraft that has to be used to launch a Kinzhal hypersonic. Going off of that, they do not have any of these aircraft in Cuba, nor do they have the ability to get them to Cuba. I believe that the range on this aircraft at its farthest is, and let me make sure, let's see, gross weight, fuel capacity, the combat range. Well, actually, its actual most efficient range with some R-33s on board, and we'll extend it a little bit, just saying that they removed all of the weapons. They just flew straight to Cuba without any weapons on board, and the ships provided the weapons instead. This thing has a range of about 3,400 miles, and if we were to say that that took off from, hell, let's go with a place that would be safe. Somewhere up near Pskov, which would be a bit of a safer area. I don't know how in the world they would fly them over Europe, but let's just say they can. This is a distance to Cuba of a nice 5,520 miles. And even if we were to try and shorten that down and say that they took off from an area of the southern Russian Don, it's in fact farther. It's 6,450 miles to Cuba, meaning that a MiG-31 would not be able to make it to Cuba. There is also not an ability to conduct aerial refueling operations for MiG-31s. They are not made for that, and so for that reason, this aircraft is largely handicapped on its range, meaning that 3,400 miles is about the farthest this thing will get, meaning that it would never make it to Cuba to be able to operate a Kinzhal hypersonic. However, there is a newer hypersonic missile called the Zircon hypersonic, and I'll go and try and pull it up really quickly, that the Russians are talking about. And so let me try and get that missile. It is the 3M22 Zircon, and I believe that we may have at least a possible graphic for the Zircon. This is what they say it looks like. There's really no actual pictures of a real Zircon, which once again throws into question how many of these are there really? Are they just in testing phase, or there maybe one or two of them? It's unknown. We don't have that information. But nevertheless, it is a hypersonic missile. This one is actually a true hypersonic missile by most measures. The Kinzhal is only a hypersonic in name. This is a real hypersonic. But even going off of that, this missile would have to be operated and fired, I believe, from some kind of a special launch system. And let me see if we can find that information and see what it would be fired off of. So here's the Wikipedia page for the 3M22 Zircon, and according to the information that we have, it uses the ZS-14 launch platform, which is a vertical launch system, meaning that it would be operated specifically by the Russian Navy, meaning that they would not be offloading any of these systems onto the Cuban mainland to be fired by ground forces or air forces in the future. That also means that right now, that frigate and that submarine are the only vessels, the only thing that the Russians could have within the area that could fire off a hypersonic missile. The Zircon most likely could make it through American air defenses within the area, such as the Patriot air defense or even the THAAD. Because while the Patriot has intercepted multiple Kinzhals, the Zircon is a little bit faster. Even at its final approach to the target, it is, I believe, a good bit faster than the Kinzhal. But then again, we're going off of really propaganda figures. We don't have any real practical information on the missile. But nevertheless, that missile has about a 1,000 kilometer range, which is approximately 700 miles, meaning that if they fired from where they are right now, or at least where we expect they are, they would be able to fire directly at Enforcer HQ and kill us. That is about the farthest that they'd be able to shoot into the United States.
Those bastards.
Those sons of bitches. But beyond that, that may be why they're putting the Zircons on those vessels, even if the vessels have them. And why they're down there, because they're right within striking range of us, so that way they can hit us and kill us. But to be honest, I'm not really that scared. You know, if they did it, whoa, boogie woogie, I'm really scared. But beyond that, that's really what they could threaten. It really is just Florida at the moment, Georgia, some parts of South Carolina, Alabama, and Mississippi. So the U.S. Southeast. So going off of that, I hope that does address that the best I can, that live chat. That was a very good one. And thank you so much once again, Sergeant Carnage, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. But you know something that is very interesting is that they're most likely targeting Enforcer HQ at this very moment, because they're scared of the Lee Spring Army. And of course, the Lee Spring Army is headquartered out of Birmingham, Alabama, considering that that is the very birthplace of the channel and the birthplace of the Lee Spring Army. And something is very important to note about that whole deal. The Lee Spring Army has flag patches, which makes sure that you can identify yourself on the battlefield. And many of y'all have gotten those, and they look incredibly good. I'm sure many of y'all will agree with that. But not only do they look incredibly good, but now, international viewers can actually get their own LSA combat patch. Hey!
Let's go!
Let's get it, baby! The LSA combat patches are now available for international order only. So if you are a domestic viewer from inside of America, you can now no longer get the patch. You're kind of in the position that the international viewers were in last week when the merch run ended. But we are selling the 3-packs to international viewers.
Whoa, Jack!
Whoa, Jack! Whoa. The 3-pack LSA patches are available for international, non-American customers only. Don't worry, though. Our next merch release will be released late June of 2024. But beyond that, you can go to continue shopping, and it says no products found, so I don't know if
you got to go pick the international country up there. Go pick Australia or something at the top of the screen. It'll show you.
So let's see. There we go. So this is for the Australians. And let's see here.
International. Anybody in the world. Anybody.
Anyone in the world, except for in America. If you're in America, tough luck. But anyone in the world can get these patches now. They do come in packs of 3, though. But because they come in packs of 3, we can ship them anywhere in the world. Y'all can get them anywhere in the world. And, of course, all of our American viewers who have already gotten hundreds of these patches can attest that the quality is incredibly good. The patches are great. They look very nice, and it's just something truly amazing about these patches. I mean, they're really something. If y'all want to get one of these, you can go to officialenforcerstore.com if you're an international viewer and get yourself a 3-pack. They will ship anywhere in the world, from what I understand. I don't think any country is barred from the list except for North Korea, China, and Russia, obviously, and Iran and Cuba. But I don't even think Cubans and North Koreans could afford these if they wanted to. But beyond that, they are incredibly nice. And so if y'all want to get some, because y'all were kind of struck out last week, y'all can go to officialenforcerstore.com. I don't think the link is in the description below. So hopefully I can try and fix that here in a moment. But nevertheless, I hope that y'all do get yourself some because they are incredibly nice, they're incredibly neat, and not only that, they help to support this channel, and 10% of the profits from these sales do go to United 24 supporting Ukrainian efforts. And so with that, I hope...
Oh, and also, by the way, the one thing that we did that we were willing to do on our end to try to ease the shipping costs, because I got the shipping as low as it would go. And currently, for example, if you want them to Canada, it's going to be about $15 shipping approximately. It depends on where the address is. And if you want it to Australia, it's going to be about $20. So what we did was we took about $5 off of the 3-pack itself. So normally it'd be like 30, we made it 25 instead, and I believe that comes out to like 39 Australian if you convert the monies like it says there on the screen. But that's what we did to try to ease the shipping cost a little bit. So it basically in my head, that kind of like took $5 off the shipping. That's how I sort of justified it. But sadly, that's as low as we could go on it and make it actually work. And still also cover the shipping as well. So that's what we've done. And if you want one, go to officialenforcerstore.com to see it.
And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. I will be trying to get the link in the description. Sadly, I can't really do that live on air, but we will do that for the next nights going on. But with that, I hope y'all are able to get to officialenforcerstore.com. If you type that in right up there at the top, officialenforcerstore.com. No caps, no spaces, just officialenforcerstore.com, and then click enter. It will take you directly to this website. We do not run any other merchandise websites, so if you see any other merchandise websites that are hawking LSA merch or Enforcer merch, that is not us. Report them to us immediately so that way we can have them shut down because they are ripping y'all off, and we do not run those merch stores. But beyond that, we are now going to be moving on from that big update, and once again, huge shout out to Sergeant Carnage for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Rob Horvath, who puts in a $50 donation. And a huge shout out to Rob for that very generous support. And he says, "Have you listened to Zelensky and his wife in the recording studio, singing and playing finger-style guitar? Endless love," he says, and they are very talented musicians.
And I thank you so much for the support, Rob Horvath. And I have not heard that because I have been very busy in the background over the past few days. I had to go and attend a little party, a birthday party for someone I know, and then I had to go and do a whole bunch of errand stuff and make videos and a million other things. And not only that, I was also trying to research how to actually make the long-form documentary video with some animations where we can make them because we got some people who are animators to reach out to us, and it costs like $1,000 for 1 minute, which I hate to say is above our budget. So sadly, we cannot get other animators. So I'll have to be the one animating if we do that. So most of my time has been taken up trying to figure out that whole side of things. So sadly, I haven't been able to see anything extremely extra to the war like that, but that still sounds pretty cool. And I would assume that Zelensky is a pretty talented musician, considering that he was an actor before he became president, but his wife also being a talented musician as well. That's incredibly interesting. And I gotta thank you so much, Rob Horvath, for sharing that interesting detail with us and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to even know that that was a thing, and I wouldn't even be able to know that they were good musicians. But I'm going to look into that after stream and check that out, so that way I can know about it just a little bit further, just know about it a little bit more. But still, with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the area of the Vovchansk front.
All right, so our last one of the segment is actually going to be a super sticker, several of them, from none other than BC Skyman, the channel legend. And he threw in a combined $60 in super stickers, and a huge shout out to BC Skyman. He's basically filling up the entire top bar of the chat box here. And thank you very much, BC, for that support, and no comments to address. But Enforcer, what say you?
And a huge thank you so much, BC Skyman, for the support and the super stickers. It does make this channel possible, and if it wasn't for folks like you who are always here and always supporting this channel, we wouldn't be able to do this as our job, our full-time job, and keep this channel running. And we are greatly appreciative to you, BC Skyman. You're you're one of the old guards of this channel. You've been around here through and through thick and thin. You were here during the first golden age. You were here during the dark ages on the channel. And now you're here for the second golden age of this channel. And I got to thank you so much once again, BC Skyman, for always being here with us. Always helping this channel to keep on running and making this thing possible. And thank you for being one of our legendary old guards as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And it's now time for us to move on into the area of the Vovchansk front. We were able to hear that the Magyar's birds were operating today, and they were striking Russian logistics trucks in the area with FPV drones. We can see one of the Russian logistics trucks right down there.
То все треба зупиняти. Ліс везуть з тилу. Добре?
And oh!
Зовні. Пада! А як добре, прямо в кабіну.
Bada boom.
Bada boom and jigga jigga blid.
Встав.
Came to a quick stop after that.
Man, he hit that E-brake. He went, he's like, blid.
Ох, яке дупло. Від попереднього приходу FPV-хи. Вон діра яка. Кабзда там декому. А тепер прогрівочні роботи.
And then they put a second one in for good measure.
Та й таке.
That's actually a fuel truck, interestingly enough. Kind of rare to see, but it's most likely going to burn quite nicely, considering that fuel burns, if y'all don't know. But moving on from that, and on behind the lines, this is probably the biggest news that we have gotten out of the area of Shebekino. This is by far one of the most important. I'll go through an analysis here to explain why it's important, why it's something very pertinent to the current conflict in Vovchansk at the moment. Let me actually explain this in only the way I can, which is by adding lines and shapes to the map. So we are going to say that this little area right here that I'm going to draw lines for is the Belgorod operational zone. So let me put that right there. So these little black lines, and right here, this is the specific front that the 6th Combined Arms Army, which is the one that's currently conducting this offensive right now in Vovchansk, is operating out of. When we talk about, and actually, you know what, let me extend these lines a little bit across the border as well. So let me edit this here, and then let me just drag that right there. And then let me drag this one over here as well, because this is a very important thing to show, and I don't really have a good way to show rather than drawing it. So, this is the current area of Russian military operations for the 6th Combined Arms Army, or at least this is what we're going to use as an approximate at the moment. There are usually 4 different depths, really there's 5, but usually 4 behind the front lines that any armed force would have. You usually have your front line, which is really up here. This would actually be the front line. Then you have what would be called, I believe it's called the depth offensive line, which would most likely start in Shebekino, or a little bit behind Shebekino, most likely. So this area right here, below this line, south of Shebekino, and just north of the Ukrainian border, this would be the second zone. This area is the actual front line. This is where a lot of the offensive forces are. There are also some limited screening forces here next to the main forces, which are trying to gather recon and intel for the main forces to advance. The second line here is the reserve offensive group, which is the one that is sitting back and waiting to move in, if need be, into that area. Then behind that, you will have the third line, or really the third group. Oh man, I clicked the wrong button. But you'll have the third group, and of course, these lines aren't perfectly straight across the map. They're just more so, you know, kind of working with the terrain or really drawn up by the commanders. But this third area right here would most likely have a few reserve forces in them. This is actually where most of the Russian artillery would probably be that's operating for the offensive forces. And not only that, this is where you also see backup command posts and other things like that. And then in your rear line back here, which is your 4th zone behind the lines, you then have all of your logistics forces, you have all of your communications guys, and you also have your most rearward command post, which usually operates your logistics and your communications as well, making sure that they're able to communicate to the higher echelons back in Moscow, and then those orders can be disseminated to the main headquarters, and then the main headquarters, which runs the 6th Combined Arms Army, will then issue orders to the rest of their units around. But that headquarters in particular, the main headquarters, would be within Shebekino. Like, and a lot of people are like, how the hell would you know that? Well, we've got hindsight now, so we know it's in Shebekino. But beyond that, this is where it would be. There is most likely a second command headquarters, usually for a larger operation like this, even on a brigade level. Usually they prefer to have 4 command posts. There is a main command post, there is then a forward command post, which is closest to the front, which may be somewhere around Murom or the area of Ustinka, depending on where they wanted to put it. Then you would have a I believe it would be called a reserve command post, which would be in this third area, probably somewhere in southern Belgorod. And then you would also have in your 4th zone, which would be in Belgorod, your support headquarters, which is managing really all of the top-end stuff, the logistics, the communications, the things that actually keep the army cohesive and operational. And so you have these 4 separate areas, but most importantly, the main command headquarters is going to be in the second zone of the front, and it's going to be most likely centered where it would be quite crucial. And for the 6th Combined Arms Army, that is in Shebekino. Now, what's interesting is that the Ukrainians found out exactly what building the 6th Combined Arms Army main headquarters was in, and apparently, with some pretty quick prudence and with a great deal of impunity, ended up striking the headquarters, if I can click that line right there, and ended up destroying the 6th Combined Arms Army headquarters. Not the forward headquarters, not the reserve headquarters, and not the support headquarters. The main headquarters, the one that was actually conducting the operations for the Russian army, was hit and destroyed just north of Vovchansk near the area of Shebekino. We actually got the picture of that headquarters right here. From what we understand, it was hit by a HIMARS strike, which collapsed the entire building, and most of the command staff and also the command equipment is in the rubble at the bottom of that building right there. Meaning that now, at this moment, the reserve headquarters, which takes over if the first one is knocked out or destroyed, is having to quickly come full speed and also pick up on a lot of information that they may not have at the moment because it may have been held in the main headquarters, and try and keep combat operations running. Because of that, we know that Russian forces within this area are most likely a little bit heavier disorganized than normal, and are also trying to figure out what the hell they're supposed to be doing, because the reserve headquarters probably is pretty incompetently run, and they have absolutely no idea of what they're doing. But beyond that, very nice to see, and that is probably some of the biggest news that we've gotten out of this area. But moving on from that and into Belgorod, we also got to see that there was a little bit of a fire that happened here, once again due to Ukrainian drone strikes.
Man, these emoji things are getting out of hand that they're putting on these videos.
Dude, this was getting electrocuted, man. It's like... it's
This was a sugar factory, I heard. Is that right?
Man, a sugar factory? Hell if I know. Like, let's see. A sugar factory.
Sugar factory.
It's a legitimate sugar factory, dude. Like, I don't even know why they hit it, but they hit it. I have no clue, though. But still, nice to see it burning. But moving on from that and out of this area, it's now time for us to move on into the location unknown. So we only have a few. We did get to see that the Russians ended up taking out a decoy BMP. I mean... it is so clearly a decoy from this distance, I don't even know why they dropped a bomb on it, but they did. We see them highlighting the BMP just in case y'all didn't see it. Maybe you're blind. The Russians are a little condescending.
These Russians thought they were sneaky, bliat, but they forgot about the auxiliary light, bliat. It's deadly.
And it looked, oh, look, it tore the decoy apart. Now they're like, oh, it's a decoy. Like they couldn't tell before. But that's the end of that clip. Honestly, Russian stupidity at that point. But moving on from that and into the next clip, we also got to see the Russians showing off a modern-day loaf, or as we call it, the буханка. And so here's the clip.
24-го года. А ну, кот, пошатай ее. Ну, это нормально. Зато здесь защита задних фонарей. Правого, левого, все четко.
That's cardboard.
Здесь просто мастер сварки был. Профессионал.
Под звездочкой. По-современному.
Здесь под звездочки. А ну, кот, закрой дверь, как она закрывается. Отойди. Ага.
Oh.
Не закрывается. Ее надо вот так докрывать. Поехали дальше. Ну, здесь ручки, да, прям огонь. Это они молодцы. Зато посмотрите, как прикручен замок. Капитально. Чтоб никогда не отвалился. Здесь уже у нас, ну, это зазоры нормально выставлены. Ой, а швы какие просто шикарные. Ой-ой-ой.
Ой-ой-ой.
Ну, в салоне вроде так симпатично у
Oh,
нас.
gosh.
Чтобы они люди покупают, не все же
Спидометр уже по центру.
покупают. Смотрите, стеклоомыватель, чтобы воду залить.
Ага, а печка просто шикарная. Вы обратите
Damn, that
на,
door closing
на
is
эту
freaking like a nuke
печку.
going off.
Просто два патрубка прикрутили, мотор на улице.
And that
Oh
seems,
man, that's an accident waiting to happen with those pipes coming in from the engine like that. Like that is a bad accident waiting to happen. Also, when you're watching this whole video here, I'm just like hearing that bald and bankrupt guy. Oh look, a new Soviet loaf at a reasonable rate of 39% APR. Great for the Russian people. It's like, how much is this like piece of crap? How much are they selling this for?
I have no clue. We're gonna have to go pull that up. Let's see. Vovchansk, блядь.
That's freaking disturbing. That's a 2024 like brand new Russian vehicle. I know it's like a utility vehicle, but still, that's crazy.
Let's see. So how much does it cost? Someone said, "What's a UAZ Buhanka?" It's death. That's what it is. But I can't really find anything about the price. So let me go pull up UAZ. The official website of UAZ. I will take the risk of going on this website and looking at it for y'all's entertainment. Okay, hang on. Hang on. Classic. It's got to be a classic, right? There are no distributors in America. Bummer, right? Like, I would
Oh,
want...
thank goodness.
Okay, so we finally found the classic.
Oh.
The Buhanka Classic.
Oh my god, man! They put it out in the field like it's all beautiful, like a Volvo or something.
Dude, they actually...
Oh my god!
They have this thing called the Profi. They have the Hunter, which looks like a ripoff. Well, actually, that's a UAZ 469. Like, no joke. Like, that's just what it is. And then they have a pickup MT. And then they have the Patriot MT.
Oh man, I want to know the price. Like, I gotta know.
Okay, so we're going to go get a price, Bliet. All right, so...
Oh my god, you can rig it out and look like a beach buggy.
No way.
Man, what in the
No
world?
way. No way. Oh my god. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Color. Wait a minute. So these are the only colors available for our Buhanka? No. No, this ain't gonna do. We want that 2023 year. Oh my god,
Oh,
you can
there
get a
we go.
tarpaulin Buhanka? I've never seen one of these.
That's crazy, man. Press buy now down there in the right corner. Like, scroll a little bit. It says order now like a pizza. Oh hell no, we're not filling that out.
Put in your social security number. Make sure to put in your bank routing number. It's like, no. It's like, we're not doing that. Sadly, I don't think we're going to get a good idea of the price. Wow, that really does look like dog water.
Oh, it said in warmth and comfort. It's like with the like tubes coming directly off the engine bay like that. Like, I don't know if this is true or not, but like typically you don't want to do that. I don't think, because there could be CO2 coming in.
Let's see here. What else do we
Or
have?
carbon monoxide.
NVH comfort, quiet and calm. Bullshit. A comfortable atmosphere in the car is achieved by an improved vibration isolation package throughout the body and special body anchorage pads. Gauge and 12V socket. A single informative gauge. Like, that's a huge selling point, so that's only a single gauge. And an updated ergonomic button layout. The dashboard contains buttons for heating the seats, turning on the alarm. Like, for
you'll
what?
need that
When you
for sure.
get robbed? Like, a 12V socket and a place for radio tape recorder. What? A radio tape? Okay, anyways, ergonomic seats. Comfortable seating position for drivers of all sizes. So they're saying if you're fat, you'll be comfortable in this thing. The ergonomic seats are longitudinally adjustable. Self-steering wheel with multifunction switches. I'd be damned, my son, they have a windshield wiper. Them multifunctional switches. I'm telling you, dude, that's crazy, man. and a roomy glove compartment that's about the size of an actual bread box. So
Oh man, if you put something in that glove box, it's like straight up metal. It's getting destroyed. Like that, especially with that Buhanka or that suspension in that thing. Like it's getting rattled and like it's getting destroyed.
dude, I also like how the Buhanka is so trash. They don't have a full-time four-wheel drive. He's only a part-time four-wheel drive, meaning that he only clocks in 20 hours a week or so, somewhere about there.
Yeah. That's actually normal. Like on that one, I won't dog him for that. That's like literally like a switch. Like you can turn on the four-wheel drive if you're off-road, but like I can only imagine that works like terribly.
Also, the approach angle, Matthew, is 30 degrees, and the departure angle is 27 degrees. So when you're approaching to buy the vehicle, you have to lean forward at it with a 30-degree tilt. But when you're leaving with it, and you've been suckered, you only have to give up 3 degrees of tilt. So, not bad.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie though, like the specs, like on the like approach angle, the clearance, and also it looks like it says the fording depth. I think that means through the water. That actually looks pretty decent, like on the stats. But I know that this hunk of junk right here, with the doors not even closing properly, it wouldn't last. Also, what's that say? Power 100. Does that say 112 horsepower?
Yes.
Oh my god, man! What's it got? Like a 2-cylinder in it?
It has the incredible modern 16-valve engine Euro 2.
What the hell is that?
I have no clue, man. Like, I have no clue.
Is there a cylinder count on this bad boy?
One. Like a 1, maybe 2. But this thing is actually horrendous. They have a brochure in English. We're not clicking on that. They'll install some spyware, malware onto the computer. Also, we can get the double cab. Oh,
That's beautiful.
class, dude. That did class. Wait, hang on. So we can pick cargo beds. Okay, so that's what that is. And then we could get the... Oh,
Combi.
wait a minute. So they actually... Okay, so the cargo van. What does the cargo van look like? Okay, so
Windows.
that's the one that they have in the video is the cargo van version. And then they have buses, which are literally the same. So yeah, that's what a Buhanka is, folks. So if y'all ever wanted to get one of these pieces of dog water, you can actually find one and get one. What is the 2020?
And also, I'm told they're $15,000 USD, so I'm not sure what that is in rubles. But it's actually pretty decently pricey for what it is.
You know, I might drive around one of these things at that price, look like an absolute idiot with it though. Get one with a cargo bed and the double cab to really look like an absolute goof.
It looks like something that Mr. Gujelik Velikin might have wanted back in the day. He might have taken an order of at least 50 of these.
Dude, this looks like something you drive up to the party meeting and go, cut the power lines. Like this is what you would drive. This is that Anatoly Dyatlov kind of drip that you would get out of this thing. But
Man, the 30 Ronkin special right here.
Dude, wait a minute. I think they had those in the show. No joke. But anyways,
Yep, they did.
Moving on from that and on out of the whole Buhanka experience, it's time for us to move a little bit further on and into the Russian casualty report because it is bussin', unequivocally. Oh!
Oh my god! 21 Bobcats. Are you joking? Is this serious?
I'm not joking. Do I sound
Oh
like
my
I'm
God.
joking? Like, do I sound like I'm joking? 21 Bobcats.
Man, I'm like hyperventilating over here. I can't handle it. 21 Bobcats. They're almost up to 2,300 total Bobcats lost. Like this is almost like this is obscene.
Dude, imagine a rental company losing that many Bobcats. Dude, bankrupt. Like, but beyond that, 21 Bobcat skid steers were destroyed over 24 hours. Not only that, 1,100 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed, along with 32 armored personnel carriers destroyed, 58 supply trucks, 23 main battle tanks, 46 artillery systems, 13 drones, 1 MLRS, and 5 anti-aircraft warfare systems. Overall, it was a very impressive day for the Ukrainian forces, and it is showing that once again they are inflicting incredibly high casualties onto attacking Russian forces and defending Russian forces, depending on where they are, while I end up not being able to speak English there for a minute. But moving on into the northeastern area, we did get to see that a Russian Buk system was destroyed by its switchblade. There is Buk. Also, by the way, thanks to everyone who subscribed, because we're now at 221,070 subscribers. Huge thanks.
Fantastic.
It's incredible. It's amazing. Because we were literally at 220,000 yesterday.
Stupendous, bliat.
Oh, dude, they hit the Buke! Oh, it's gonna make me puke! But anyway, so you see the Buke.
Rebuke it now, get away.
Dude, they said, Zim Shalabim, bled. We're going to nuke you. We see the Russians running around down there going, oh, crap. And it's on fire. Oh, yeah, the transport and the Buke is lost. That's actually a pretty good collateral right there.
Oh, it's leaving.
Oh, dude, they said, unhook the hitches, floor it. Oh my gosh, dude, look at him. They're like, I gotta get out of here.
Hey guys, Russian truck driver.
Dude,
Top skirt.
no, better yet, dude, this guy said, hi guys, brown pants here. I'm gonna floor it. And then just pulled away.
Skirt.
But moving on from that clip, which is nice to see them destroying a Buke and a trailer, not the vehicle, but just a trailer, we also got to see a Ukrainian BMP-2 strafing the Russians near the area of Cherny in the Donetsk Oblast. We're going to be muting that, but we can see our little APC riding around down there.
Also, how's my mic doing, by the way? Does it sound better?
It sounds way better. Like, at the beginning, Matthew, I'm not lying, dude. It actually sounded like this. You're like, oh yeah, the Russian Navy is on its way, and I was like, oh my god, I was like, my ears.
Oh, it's like hearing in 4K.
Dude, I was actually starting, my eyes were watering up from how loud it was, and I kept on turning it down, and I was like, dang, that is so freaking loud. I don't know.
I'm not gonna lie. I make a couple of good points now and then, but I wouldn't be crying about it. I mean, it's not that crazy.
But anyways,
And I'm crying at the genius of the statement. Man, I'm sorry, I sound like Jeremy Clarkson. They're marveling at my genius.
I feel my genius, or whatever he used to say. Yeah, I don't think he says that now anymore. I don't.
Oh, he does. He says it every day.
Oh.
He says it all the time.
Until he runs into the council.
Oh, you know about the council. You've
Oh,
been
yeah.
watching that show then.
I've been watching that show. You know it, boy. Also, with that, moving on from that clip and on into our next one, we also got to see the 28th Brigade out there on the Eastern Front firing an RPG-7, wandering around inside their grassy trenches, walking around with a AK-47 or an AKM, and then we can also see them firing what appears to be a PKP Pechnik. But beyond that, really nice to see them doing their thing. But before we move on, so many people are talking about Poland saying that Russia may be storing 100 nukes in Kaliningrad, which is kind of a top story. Hi guys, Enforcer here. Top story. Poland says Russia could be housing nuclear weapons in Kaliningrad. And a lot of people are wondering, what do you think? What should be done about this? Some say Russia should be threatened by the West. Others say it doesn't matter, leave it alone. Some say send the usual diplomatic statements, and others say the West should attack if not removed.
Oh,
But Matthew, so many people have had comments on this. I see that 3,000 people have put in their say on this. And what are people saying about it, and what are you thinking about it?
so yes, about 3,000 people have put in their votes here on this one. Not 30,000. That'd been a Russian fake election. But it looks like 30% said Russia should be threatened by the West over these nukes in Kaliningrad, while 34% said it really doesn't matter, leave it alone, and 22% said send the usual diplomatic statements, and 13% said the West should attack if not removed. And honestly, on this one, you know, it is a little bit disturbing that Russia is storing nukes in Kaliningrad, at least according to Poland's intel. And I'm not sure if anyone else has really backed that up yet, but that is what Poland's saying. I would say, honestly, send the usual diplomatic statements, but we probably should not attack Kaliningrad if there are nukes there. That's probably not a good thing to do. And also, they're really not changing the strategic nuclear situation really hardly at all, because if Russia wanted to strike us, they could do it from their mainland. They don't have to have them in Kaliningrad. So, you know, to me, it's serious, but it's not something we should go to war over. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, in my opinion, it doesn't matter, leave it alone. Because there is a point where you can threaten them about things like moving nuclear weapons into Belarus, but these nuclear weapons are in officially recognized Russian territory. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, Kaliningrad is Königsberg. It's not anymore, and it never will be again, much like most of Poland will not be a part of Germany again. It's just how things are, so we have to work with it. This is a legitimate part of the Russian Federation. Legally, on a national level, they have a right to put nuclear weapons there. It would start getting into the realm, in my opinion, of absurdity if we started to tell them that where they can put nuclear weapons in their own territory because legally they can put them wherever they want inside of Russia. Beyond that, then it becomes a diplomatic issue if they want to move them into other countries, and we can react to that. But nuclear weapons in Kaliningrad is just something that we really can't really react to too much because it's a part of Russia. It's not like they're moving nuclear weapons into Belarus or they're giving nuclear weapons to Cuba, which would be a completely different thing. That's Russian land. Like, that's a official recognized part of the Russian Federation. So to start threatening them to move nukes around in Kaliningrad, then the Russians could just start to threaten a nuclear annihilation on the United States if we don't move around nuclear weapons inside of our own territory. And that starts to get into a very gray area of diplomacy where you start to go a little bit too tit for tat, and then you could start getting into massive issues on in the future. But with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can. And let's see here. Seeing some people saying some things in the chat, just making sure to read. Let's see. They stand. Also kind of shows. Let's see. And it doesn't really show that they're going all out. I saw someone say just putting nuclear weapons there shows that they're going to go all out. Not really, because if we put nuclear weapons in Guam, it doesn't show that we're willing to go out all out. We're just putting nuclear weapons in Guam. It may be a bit of a diplomatic statement, but beyond that, the Chinese or anyone can't really do much about that because it's a it's an officially recognized U.S. territory. And so that's how I look at it. It's just nothing to really be that concerned about, nothing even really to talk about. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And moving on into the rear lines, we also got to see a Panzer S1 got obliterated today. The crew apparently did not survive. They perished with the vehicle, but we can see the burning and destroyed Panzer right here.
Бля, у него ракеты сработали вон все. Сейчас.
Robert Hoffman said, look at parts of America that are worse than these places. I guess after we
Worse
showed
than Cuba?
Yeah, you're stretching it, buddy. You're stretching it, man.
Yeah, really. That's a stretch. I've never seen anywhere, not even in Mississippi or Alabama, that looks like Cuba.
And that Panzer is toast, my boy. But really quickly, we're going to have to refute what our boy Robert Hoffman said in the chat, if I'm reading that correctly, because it's just not true. I mean, the actual picture proof shows that it's not true. But with that, that's the end of that clip right there. And really quickly, I'm going to take y'all to a random town in America and then a random town in Cuba. So we're going to go out here to Missouri, to Warsaw, just for the hell of it, because it sounds like Poland. We're going to drop down on a random street. So this is Warsaw, Missouri. Random American town. Just random intersection. Okay, so now we're going to leave Warsaw, Missouri, now that y'all have gotten a good look. And we're going to go down to Cuba. And we're going to go down to the nice city of Camagüey. And let's take a look at what it looks like on a random street. This is a church. Let us move out from the church that has not been pressure washed in 70 years. And let us try and find something like here. Maybe this is a street view. Ah, yes. The street view. I would say, in my...
Is this America?
This is Cuba.
Oh, I was about to say. I was about to say, this has gotten pretty rough wherever this is.
I would say, in my humble opinion, that Cuba just can't be beat. Like, Cuba is the North Korea of America, for the large part, with how bad off they are. I mean, look at these streets. Look at these cars. Look at these buildings. I mean, it's not that great looking, I'm not going to lie. Also,
I would go as far as to say that Cuba looks worse than Gary, Indiana, and that's saying a lot.
Okay, so here's another part of the town.
Oh.
Just to give you all a little bit of an idea of what Cuba is really like. It's not a beautiful place. It's not really a nice place. Just putting it out there, I don't think that this looks better than some places in America. And I mean, we could go to Gary. We can go to Gary. Like,
pick on Gary. Go there and show him.
Oh, God. Okay, so we are in Gary. So let's drop down in Gary really quickly. I'm sorry, everyone. I know we were interrupting war news, but this is for something very important. This doesn't even look as bad as an actual living city in Cuba. And this city is almost completely abandoned at this point.
Gary, Indiana's making like, or excuse me, Cuba's making Gary, Indiana look like the promised land out here. Like, and that's really bad.
Man, that is bad. Like Gary actually looks really good compared to what we just came from in Cuba. You got to remember that, folks. Like you can people say things, and I'll be entirely honest, and I'll just be frank here for a minute, that I take as goofy when people are like, oh yeah, Russia looks bad. Well, I've seen worse places in America. It's like, are you kidding me? It's like do you really believe that? Like, do you want to live in Cuba? I don't want to live in Cuba. I'm much happier living here in America. America's actually nice, unlike Cuba. You know what? Let's just drop down in one other place. Let's go to Guantanamo, and let's just see what it looks like in Guantanamo. So here we go. We got a picture right here. It looks like it's from a building or something. So we have a nice little statue here. This looks like a square. We've got a little church. This isn't that bad, but we need to get out of the square. I need to find an actual...
Wait a minute, this is Guantanamo. This is where they have those, I think they called it enhanced living techniques or something like that. There's ways of like living here that you've never heard of before.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, it's not the town of Guantanamo. It's just south, and they have these crazy things called water boards, and I guess they use them to like ride the waves out in like the Bay of Guantanamo. But I've heard that
Real fun.
Say what?
That's real fun, when they waterboard out there on the water, like those big waves, like you gotta catch a wave, and it's just real fun.
I'm telling you what, man, but don't let the water go up your nose because it always burns a little bit. But beyond that,
salt water,
tough water, bad water, tough water. But you can see the border road that goes all the way around Guantanamo right here, by the way. And Guantanamo Bay is actually named after Guantanamo, which the bay is named after. But beyond that, we also have the village of Paraguay. Do we have a picture? Nope, we don't. Apparently, Cuban authorities don't allow you to get that close. So, do we have anything in any town? You know what? We'll go up here because there's some pictures in this town. So, I hope we can actually see the town. Yeah, the shit water mixing with the dirt street really makes me think that America can be beat by this. I think that we have a winner here. So
why is this like the portal to hell or something? Like you're moving this around, it's like the door like from hell, like stepping into a different type of hell or something like that. This is weird.
Dude, you wake up and you just see this and you go, get me out of here. And then you get thrown into the picture or something. But do we have another one from the city? Because I saw a second one. Oh, we have a lot of them, actually. Let's go here.
Someone said in the live chat, said, bit of bad faith takes here. No, I've got a lot of good faith here. Like, I'm actually, like, going kind of light on Cuba, but this is looking pretty rough.
Okay, so you got this nice central square, right? And then you can see the absolute decay just literally right off the square right there. Listen, people are like, oh, Cuba's not that bad. Like, what are y'all? Like the people who are saying that, not everyone, but the people who are saying that, where the hell are y'all from? Like, this does not look good. Like, I hate to break it to y'all. It's just not that nice looking. I mean, especially when you have to put up, let's see here.
CD and DVD. Wait a minute, what is this? Wait a minute, back away from this. This could be sketchy.
This is some kind of a store, like, of some sort.
That's scaring me for some reason. Like, what's that? I don't even know what that sign says, but it's a little sketchy.
Okay, so it says novelties, documentaries, animated peculiarities.
Oh, man, this is sketchy. They got the local climatizado in here too.
We got the air conditioning.
The local climate.
Yeah, I wouldn't go in that store. Like just saying, I don't know if this was an advert for them or anything, but I'd avoid them. But then you can look right next door and you can see that people are probably getting shivved over there. They actually look like a COD map, I'm not gonna lie. So I wouldn't live here, is what I'm trying to say. But let's go up here to this little spot. And remember, we're just picking random spots. Jeez. Dude. I want that open air balcony. I want that open air second floor bedroom. You know, like when the rains come, you get a nice shower. This is bad though. All right, like I don't.
This is like the wasteland on Fallout 4. Like when the guy goes wandering around the wasteland. You know, this is like what it looks like.
Let's see, one more, and then we'll quit. That's what everyone says. But anyways, what the is this like a decapitated head on the ground or something? Like what is this?
Man, he's taking a prone shot. Like, I don't even understand this. Why is he on that nasty floor taking a picture?
Dude, I have no clue. We're going to have to pick another one now. That one doesn't count. We have to pick another one because that was a decapitated head. We'll go to Nuevo Llano. Oh, well, Nuevo Llano, I believe is how it will be pronounced. Ooh! And sewage running through the streets. I love it. This beats America any day, Matthew. That nice Cubano brick and that nice shanty shack. I mean, you could really be anywhere in America with this kind of construction quality right here.
Man, I'm telling you what, this is rough. They blurred something out down the street. Something ugly was happening down there. They couldn't let it be shown.
The blurred out cartel execution. It's complete. I mean, this really is better than America by all means. And this giant blue wall here just solidifies that fact. You can't beat this. Like, you just cannot. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, because we just had to quickly go into a short little aside, because someone said that Cuba could beat some of the worst looking places in America, and considering Gary, Indiana is the worst, and it looks like paradise compared to normal places in Cuba, I would have to say I believe, not just by opinion, but by facts and logic, that we actually beat that assertion. So moving on from Cuba and back into what we're actually here for, which is the war in Ukraine. It's now time for us to move on down the line from the Pantsir S1 and down into Chasiv Yar, where we got to see some drone footage of what the area currently looks like. And we can see, of course, Chasiv Yar has been subjected to a heavy amount of artillery fire and a heavy amount of damage, but once again, it is showing that Ukrainian forces are holding, as they've held in a single area for so long that it can be largely destroyed by Russian artillery over an extended period of time. Brian Perkins said, this won't age well when you're trying to be president. Look, I'm not trying to make diplomatic relations with Cuba a regularized thing. It's like, if that's used against me, oh well, it's like, what are people going to say? It's not true, or
now listen. Now, if anybody ever asks you when you're running for president, say, "Excuse me, sir, what do you think of Cuba?" You better not do not say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean." No,
I'm going to say,
sorry. You'd be like, "It looks like a shithole," because it is.
Dude, I'm going to say it looks horrendous. Like you say, it's going to not look good. What will look good? Saying that Cuba's all right? I mean, Cuba's an enemy of the United States, and not only that, they are a rundown hellhole. I mean, it's just honest. It's honest truth. But moving on from that and into the next clip down near Avdiivka, we also got to see a 33rd Mechanized Brigade M113 with an automated machine gun turret on top of it, which is actually a very rare thing to see for a M113, but really cool at the same time. Moving on from that and behind the lines, we also got to see a Ukrainian Su-25 firing off some unguided rockets.
Nothing like the shoot out into oblivion routine.
Oh yeah, and we actually see them impacting downrange. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, but really neat to see the Su-25s in operation. Meanwhile, a Russian Su-25 got shot down over the area today. There it is. And we hear the manpads pulling up. And there's another one. And they fired.
Dang.
Позиція 2024 року. Ракета пішла за ціллю.
And they got it.
Suka Bliat.
And that's the end of that clip. But really nice to see they were able to knock out an Su-25 in the area. Meanwhile, moving on down into the southern Donetsk, we also got to see that a Russian electronic warfare system was destroyed. We can actually see the specific electronic warfare system moving around right here. And Brian Perkins said, "You know how politics works. Hey, they can try and put that any way they want, but how in the world do you even make that sound bad? Like I say, Cuba is a bad-off country. It's an enemy of the United States. It looks terrible. It looks like a hellhole. And then someone's going to go, no, like how in the world do you even react to that and make the statement look bad? I mean, I'm not speaking.
Oh man, if you're a good campaign manager, you can make anything, like any statement, now no matter how innocent, you can make it sound bad if you really twist it the right way.
Well, I'm gonna live and die by the statements I make. Cuba looks like a hellhole, and if it's brought up in the future, I'm just gonna say it does look like a hellhole. I mean, maybe things change in 20 to 30 years, then my mindset will be different. If Cuba is a friend of the United States and economically they're prospering, but right now they're not a friend of the United States. They are an unmitigated hellhole, and that's the position I'm gonna have. Like, it's just like I'm not backing off of that. But we can see the electronic warfare system getting hit time and time again.
They should let Zelensky go down to Cuba and run it after he gets done making sure that Ukraine wins the war. Zelensky could set Cuba straight.
Yeah. Also, Brian, I'm not mad at you. I'm just saying, because the silliness of someone to try and make that comment into a bad thing. It's like, how in the world, how in the world could you actually do that? I'm not saying, I'm not like getting aggravated at you. I'm just getting, how in the world would you even make that a bad statement? That's really what I'm trying to say. And then I start getting worked up thinking about it. I'm like, how the hell do you even make it a bad statement? But anyways, moving on from that and on to the next clip, down near the area of Novomikhailivka, we also got to see an MTLB down in this area cooking. But it looks like it made itself a nice mud angel on the ground.
That was fatal.
Fatal. Good words. I like that. And we can see them hitting the MTLB again. Boop. Right on the nose.
It's like one of those creatures that try to burrow into the ground when it detects danger. The Russian equipment it automatically started digging into the ground. Do that David Attenborough impression. That's what I was trying to imitate, but it went terrible.
Here we can see the MTLB threatened, trying to dig itself into the ground. It is attempting to make an improvised burrow to protect itself from the Ukrainian dangers above. The first hit strikes. The panicked MTLB freezes with fear. The second Ukrainian drone finishes the kill. A second hit. Our MTLB has become a delicious supper for the Ukrainian drones.
Classic. That's a classic Alfredo. But moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also got to see the Russians running over a couple of mines just a few miles south. Boom! Oh! A few moments later. Poof! And he hit a mine. And that's the end of that clip, but beautiful to see, and wonderful to know that they were able to knock out 2 Russian vehicles in the area. Moving on from that and down the lines to the area of Rabotny, we also got to see some Russians filming in this area.
Полетели в рот тефтели. Вот это все, что нас, блядь, распетушили нас к хуям, короче. О, блядь, мазефака. Что-то уебало, блядь. Вот это все, что вокруг нас. Полная залупа. Все раздолбано нахер. Техника, все вот это, блядь, полная шляпа. О, пистонят дьяволы, блядь. Короче, все распиздошено. О, блядь. Мазефака. Stupid motherfucker.
They hate America, but they gotta use our curse words. It's just how it works.
Вот такие пирожки. Я его все.
Dude might want to put the phone down and start fighting.
But with that, that's the end of the clip, and you can get an idea of what it's like in the Zaporizhia front for the Russians. Meanwhile, down in the Krinky area, we also got to see the 137th Separate Marine Battalion come under fire in the area of the Dnipro River.
Ugh. Oh,
kurwa!
crap.
Dang, that mortar fire is right on top of these guys. And with that, that's the end of that clip, but still, showing us a little bit of the action going on the banks of the Dnipro. Meanwhile, we also got to see that a Russian Su-25 clearly got hit in this area by a Ukrainian manpad and continued to fly. A little unfortunate, but still interesting to look at. There's the Su-25, gets hit by the manpad right there. It was actually close to the front of the aircraft. We now see it firing off its rockets. And now pulling out of the area after firing off its rockets. See him looking off into the distance again when you hear the lens zooming in and zooming out.
Dude's got the old VHS style camera.
Man, the sounds, they're classic.
That water looks good.
Man, that water be looking nice and blue. Like it's the bluest water I've ever seen in Ukraine. But moving on from that, it is now time for us to move on out of the area of Kharkiv and really the entirety of the Dnipro area, as it's now time for us to move north to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 600. 600. What the hell am I talking about? 839 of the war. And he actually spoke to the Bundestag in Germany. And so, let me see here. Actually, he spoke at two different places at the same time, apparently. So, let me move us to this one. And here we go. Let me make sure to turn on them subtitles, and we want the subtitles to be English. And we'll put that right there. And without further ado, here is the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Volodymyr Zelensky.
Вітаємо президента України Володимира Зеленського.
Дякую тобі. Дякуємо вам. Олафе, я хочу подякувати тобі. Урсула, всім нашим друзям, хто нас підтримує. Хочу подякувати Німеччині, всім вашим людям за все, що ви зробили для України. Слава Україні! I said in Ukrainian, I'm not sure, Olaf, that you understood. But we spoke a lot, you know, our language almost. Дорогі Олафе, Урсула, шановні учасниці конференції, для нас честь бути сьогодні тут. Дякую за вашу увагу до України і українців, за вашу підтримку у нашому захисті життя. Життя, яке має перемогти російську війну. Дорогі друзі, ця війна має різні рівні протистояння. Фронт, тобто земля, небо і море, де наші люди захищаються від військових ударів російського окупанта. Наш економічний захист, потреба зберегти всі основи нормального соціального життя, робочі місця для людей, податки для держави та місцевих громад, можливість підприємців підтримувати та розширювати роботу компаній. Також політичне протистояння, в якому ми усі разом маємо протидіяти спробам Росії розколоти та послабити демократичний світ. І битва за мотивацію людей, за саме за відчуття того, чи зберігає нормальне життя свої позиції. Витримати та виграти таке протистояння – це комплексна робота. Це зусилля і в обороні України від російської агресії, і в забезпеченні стійкості нашого суспільства до будь-яких ударів цієї війни, і збереження нашого спільного з вами європейського способу життя. Життя, від якого не залишається нічого всюди, куди приходить Путін, куди приходить путінська Росія. Спочатку приходить розколом та гібридною війною, як в Молдову, як в Грузію, а потім і війною тотальною, як проти держави Україна. Отже, перше – це фронт. Українці за більш ніж 2 роки цієї війни довели, що ми здатні вибивати окупанта з нашої території і досягати необхідних Україні перемог. Ми можемо виганяти російську армію з нашої землі. Ми виграли для України Чорне море і довели, що завдяки сучасним системам ППО ми можемо знищувати будь-які російські ракети і дрони. Що при цьому ключове – уміння позбавляти Росію тієї чи іншої переваги. Станом на тепер найбільша російська стратегічна перевага над Україною – це перевага в небі. Це ракетний і бомбовий терор, який допомагає російським військам просуватись на землі, а російській ненависті руйнувати життя. Життя українців, українок, життя в наших містах і селах. Лише керованих авіабомб щоденно до сотні. Неділя – 80 керованих авіаударів. Понеділок – 95 керованих авіабомб. Це шалено руйнівний тиск. Плюс ракети, плюс ударні дрони. Поки ми не позбавимо Росію такої можливості тероризувати Україну, у Путіна не буде справжнього інтересу шукати чесний мир, і буде незмінною його ілюзія, що Україну можна стерти, розбивши бомбами і ракетами все, що дає життю основу і захист. ППО – це відповідь. Дякую, Олафе, за ППО. Німеччина вже є одним із глобальних лідерів по допомозі нам із протиповітряною обороною. Я хочу подякувати і всім вашим виробникам окремо за айріси. Це дійсно дуже сильно допомогло. Отже, дякую за Петріоти, айріси, інші інструменти, які є буквально спасінням для України. Нам вдалося забезпечити частковий захист від російських ударів з повітря. Ми маємо і можемо зробити більше. Ми потребуємо щонайменше 7 систем Петріот додатково, щоб закрити основні наші міські агломерації найближчим часом. І це буде драйвером збереження нормального життя в Україні, на яке так заслуговують наші люди. Тобто прямої допомоги обороні і гарантією, що економічне життя країни не буде зруйновано. Шановний пане канцлере, Олафе, я дякую тобі ще раз за підтримку України в питаннях ППО. І тут в Берліні є також Марк Рюте, прем'єр-міністр Нідерландів, і разом з Німеччиною, разом з Нідерландами, разом зі Сполученими Штатами та іншими нашими партнерами ми працюємо зараз над тим, щоб забезпечити Україні більше ППО. І вже бачимо, як і коли зможемо доставити в Україну нові системи. Коли вони запрацюють для захисту наших людей, це буде значним відновленням впевненості, що мир наближається. Друге. Одна з основних путінських мішеней в Україні – це енергетика. Від перших років свого правління він розглядає саме енергоресурси, енергогенерацію та енергоспоживання як зброю, інструмент для впливу та підкорення націй. Європа неодноразово вже з цим стикалася. Зараз Україна страждає від найбільш деструктивної форми російського бачення енергії як зброї. Внаслідок ударів російських ракет та дронів знищено вже 9 гігават потужності. При тому, що пік споживання енергії в Україні минулої зими був 18 гігават. Отже, половини тепер не існує. Втім, числа самі по собі не звучать. Що таке 9 гігават? Берлін – це близько 2 гігават потреби. Мюнхен – десь до 3 гігават. Ми вже втратили в рази більше генерацію, ніж обсяг енергоспоживання великих міст. 80% теплової генерації в Україні, третина гідрогенерації, вони просто знищені Путіним. І це ще не межа його терору, на жаль. Але ми мусимо поставити межу і почати енергетичне відновлення. Дорогі друзі, ми маємо зробити все можливе і неможливе для того, щоб зберегти наявну генерацію та по максимуму відновити своє втрачене. І це завдання важливе не лише з української перспективи. Путін намагається ударами по Україні відточити практики знищення енергооб'єктів від звичайних теплових електростанцій і дамб до таких елементів енергосистем, як газові сховища та інтерконектори, які поєднують нашу енергосистему з європейською. Тому відбудовано в Україні зараз, відремонтовано, захищено буде подвійним результатом, буде слугувати Україні та Європі. Слугувати як основа, енергооснова протягом наступних десятиліть, а також буде доказом того, що арсенал Росії не збереже таку зброю, як блекаут. Україна має всю природню основу для сучасної енергетики. Але без вашого кредитування та інвестицій ми не зможемо це реалізувати. І тут йдеться не про гранти, а про високодоходні інвестиції для ваших компаній, про великий ринок для вашого обладнання, про кредитні програми для ваших інституцій. Все це разом з нами створить новий енергетичний фундамент. Щонайменше десятки тисяч нових робочих місць та забезпечить і нам, і вам відчутне економічне зростання. В коротшій перспективі ми повинні реалізувати також швидке та недороге відновлення усіх енергооб'єктів, які можливо зараз відновити. До зими. Це так важливо. До зими. Протягом наступних 3-4 місяців. Ми знаємо, як це забезпечити. Від вас просимо обладнання з ваших, до речі, зупинених електростанцій та пряму фінансову підтримку. Це дозволить відреагувати на ситуацію тут і зараз. Зберегти нормальне життя. Ще один елемент – це високоефективна, децентралізована, маневрена газова генерація, яка вирішить питання дефіциту енергії сьогодні, а завтра буде переведена на водень і балансуватиме нову зелену енергетику. Саме в цій галузі європейські та, зокрема, німецькі компанії є технологічними лідерами. Саме в цій галузі у нас є чіткий план, як збудувати до 1 гігавата потужності вже цьогоріч. Я знов підкреслюю, потрібно говорити не тільки про перспективи, потрібно вирішувати проблеми сьогодні. Сьогодні йде війна, цьогоріч іще 4 гігавати протягом наступних найближчих років. Саме в цій галузі в рамках нашої конференції ми підписуємо перші контракти. І саме для цього ми потребуємо вашого максимального лідерства. Передусім для експортно-кредитного фінансування проєктів і також вашої експертизи та реального досвіду, підтвердженого, зокрема, німецькими громадами. Це те, що зміцнить обидві наші країн. Третій пункт – політика. Як би не змінювались політичні настрої в Європі, факт нашої реальності такий: Євросоюз потрібен всім європейцям без виключення. Кожній нації, яка поділяє спільні цінності всієї Європи та хоче жити, як ми, жити в мирі. Українці – така нація, як і наші сусіди в Молдові, як і народ Грузії, як і держави Балкан та інші, хто поважає Європу, свободу і верховенство права. Обов'язково настане й час вільної Білорусі. Білорусі в Європі. Станом на зараз Україна вже виконала все, що було потрібно для фактичного відкриття переговорів про членство нашої держави в Євросоюзі. Всі передумови реалізовані. Цей червень має стати таким часом, коли буде затверджена переговорна рамка і розпочаті самі перемовини. Чому це потрібно? Бо це виконання обіцянок, які дає Європа. І це доказ того, що Європу не зламати ані тиском, ані штучними сумнівами чи будь-якими маніпуляціями. І четверта мотивація. У ХХ столітті Європа пройшла масштабне відновлення. Континент, що був побитий світовими війнами. Європа відродилась у силу, без якої не уявити сьогодні глобальне життя. Для цього спрацювало все в Європі: і соціальна сила країн, і виробничі традиції та промислова культура європейців, і, зокрема, німців, і правильно обраний шлях, і взаємодія з глобальним світом. Але основою всього цього були конкретні рішення, конкретні домовленості, бізнес-ідеї, конкретні проекти, які запрацювали. На початку цього року, коли ми домовлялись з Олафом, паном канцлером, про цю конференцію, я дуже просив про те, щоб це стало максимально практичним і конкретним, щоб ми вийшли з цієї конференції не тільки з риторикою, а з угодами, які стануть економічним зростанням для наших країн і новою силою для наших громад України та Німеччини. І я радий, що саме такий характер конференції був забезпечений. Зараз і на рівні урядовому, і на рівні громад, на рівні компаній готуються до укладення сотні угод між нами. Також тут присутні наші друзі з країн-партнерів, і не лише з Європи. З цієї конференції ми вийдемо з домовленостями на мільярди євро і для нашої оборони щодо виробництва в Україні військової техніки та зброї, і для нашої енергетики, для ремонтів та розбудови нової та більш сучасної енергетики, і для нашого соціального життя. І це стосується, зокрема, освіти в громадах, будівництва житла, постачання медичного обладнання. Окремо я хочу відзначити підтримку підприємництва в Україні, і це вже сказав сьогодні пан канцлер. Це все те, що додає нам життєстійкості в умовах війни та відчуття, що життя все одно переможе.
Wait a minute. Schultz!
And Ярослава.
Я абсолютно впевнений, що Україна реалізує свій проєкт національного відновлення, і це стане проєктом європейського відновлення. Чи може це відбутись без Німеччини? Точно ні. І це саме той випадок, коли глобальна німецька сила матиме очевидне підтвердження силою українського життя. Дякую вам ще раз за запрошення. Дякую тобі, Олафе, дякую, Урсула, партнерам. Ми дуже вдячні. Дякую за підтримку вашим людям, передусім людям вашої держави, які прихистили стільки наших людей. Вони дуже справжні. Я думаю, це найголовніше, що їх об'єднує. Це цінності. Вони цілісні, дуже чесні і дуже сміливі. Дякую вам. Слава Україні!
Героям слава, baby! And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 839 of The Wire. And it's about to move us on into the second segment of the stream, where we're going to talk to all y'all! And so it's an incredibly fun segment. I don't know why I had to be so hype about it, but it is incredibly fun because we get to talk about whatever y'all want to talk about in this question segment. And so, Matthew, without me going into too much of a preamble, take it away.
All right, so it's now time for the final question segment of the night. The segment that everyone waits all stream long to get to. And of course, we have one more poll question to get to, and this one says, today, North Korean troops briefly crossed the border into South Korea, prompting warning shots to be fired at those troops, and then they briefly scurried back across the border. And what are your thoughts? 50% said North Korea is simply being petty again, while 33% said North Korea is probing border security, and 11% said that's very serious and a bad sign of something to come. And on this one, honestly, I think North Korea might have been probing the border security. North Korea and South Korea have gotten into a petty exchange of like escalations, sort of like petty escalations, but I think this was more about figuring out what parts of the border are secure and which ones aren't for North Korea's intel. That is my assumption. But of course, I don't know why North Korea is deciding to send troops literally across the border into South Korea, considering they could have been shot and that could have started a very bad incident. But that's North Korea for you. But Enforcer, what say you?
From what I understand, they crossed in a forested area where the border wasn't clearly defined all too well. And then they retreated back across. I would say that this was more so an accident, because if they were trying to probe the border, doing it in just one place one time gives them no info, because they just go there and they go, okay, we got shot at. Like, they don't know if they go to different places along the border, if they're going to get shot at more or less, say on the eastern side of South Korea instead of the western side, or anywhere in between along the whole DMZ. Just crossing one area and getting shot at doesn't really, it's not even a probe, it's more so just getting shot at. So in my opinion, I would say that that probably wasn't a probe. It probably wasn't them being petty. It was probably just a border inspection crew that went towards the border to go, I guess, check. They crossed the waypoints, and then they ended up getting shot at. Because that's really what I heard, was that that the border area wasn't clearly defined. They accidentally crossed. They ended up having warning shots shot at them, and then they started running right back across the border in North Korea, or towards North Korea, wherever that was. And so I hope that addresses that well, at least in my opinion, because I don't really think this was actually a part of rising Korean tensions. I feel like that was truly just a complete accident, probably by incompetence from the North Korean squad leader that led them across the DMZ on accident. Because that has happened many, many times before in the past, an insanely high amount of times by both sides, accidentally crossing a little bit too far, and then they get shot at, and then someone gets wounded. Usually very rarely to see one get killed and those kinds of things, but someone sometimes does end up getting wounded. But accidental crossings like that, where they then run back across, it happens a lot more than you'd think, at least on a historical level. That's why they usually just, after like the single incident like today, that will fade into the background. It'll be something that no one ever thinks about or talks about again, because there isn't really much to think about or talk about with it. It's just a largely normal occurrence for people to accidentally meander their way across the most heavily armed border in the world. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, well, that was our last poll to address for the night. So with that, we're now moving back into our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have another massive $50 donation, this time from BC Skyman, the channel legend. And sadly, he already left for the night. But thank you very much, BC, and we are in memorandum, or memoriam, or however it's said. But anyways, memorandum. Listen, that's what they said between Ukraine and also the United States, Russia, and the UK. They said, we're in memorandum. And Ukraine said, cap. And we're like, yo, it's cap. But anyways, moving on to the Super Chat. BC Skyman said, I want to thank everyone in this wonderful LSA family for helping Yuri and I with the medical bandages for the troops in Ukraine. And Yuri plans to leave at the end of June or possibly in July. So there's plenty of time to send the bandages, and Enforcers rock.
And thank you so much for saying we rock, because you rock, BC Skyman, and Yuri rocks as well. We actually got my bandages in there is 150 of them, and I'm just trying to get some information from Matthew so that way I can reach out to you and then mail them on my own to you. So far, I don't think I've gotten that info yet. So
I gave you his email address.
Over which email? Like, like I didn't see it on
like in person. Remember, you wrote it down.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot. I've been a little busy today, roaming around, scooting, shooting, all that stuff. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much for the support. I am going to be reaching out to you tomorrow, now that I actually have the email, which I had all day and I completely forgot about. But I'm going to be making sure to reach out to you probably after the end of this stream, and email you so that way I can get the mailing address and send the bandages forward, because we want to make sure that we have as many bandages going over to Ukraine as possible as a part of this Lee Spring Army effort. And I got to thank you so much once again, BC Skyman, for going through this incredible effort. Not only you, but Yuri as well, and I hope that this goes incredibly well. I hope that these bandages help to save so many lives, and I thank you so much once again for being an absolute channel legend, and also giving a huge shout out to the incredibly kind and incredibly generous Lee Spring Army that has helped out tremendously in this effort to get a load of Leukomed medical bandages over to Ukraine. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Merlin71, who put in a $22 donation, and thank you very much, Merlin, as well, for that support. And he said, Lee Spring Army was born when the enforcer effed up and thought that Army vehicles had airbags and no Lee Springs, so he was instantly jumped, and I mean jumped, upon by the people when the Army name was invented. Oh my God, LMAO!
And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. That was a pretty good recounting of the story. That's pretty much how it went. And I remember, actually something that's funny is that the Lee Spring Army, by number, is one of the, I believe it may be one of the largest pro-Ukraine communities out there. And I'm not talking about YouTube channels with subscribers. I'm actually talking about legitimate, identifiable communities. Because everyone who subscribes to this channel is a part of the Lee Spring Army. And that means the Lee Spring Army has about 221,000, I think, active members right now. 221,129 active members at the moment, which is an incredibly large amount. And it apparently beats out NAFO from what I heard from someone who was in NAFO, because they have about 108,000 members, meaning that the Lee Spring Army is twice the size, which is pretty wild to think about. But beyond that, it is crazy to think that this community came such a way and is so large at this point. And what's even crazier is that the Lee Spring Army kind of came into being after Matthew became a part of the channel. But the thing is that if y'all know a lot about channel lore and about the First Great Schism, one of the big things that caused the schism is that instead of completely trying to ignore the joke and do what most people would, which would end up in disaster, was to try and stamp out people making the joke and then act like it never happened, which would only make people more emboldened to believe it did happen and, you know, really get you for it. They did not want us to actually embrace the Lee Spring Army thing, and we did it anyways. And so the Lee Spring Army is still here. Those moderators aren't. And then the second wave of moderators aren't here or there or anywhere anymore either. And it really shows you how the Lee Spring Army never really will die. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. Thank you for sharing that story and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who helped to make this thing possible. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Marion Deemert, who puts in a $20 donation as well. And huge shout out to Marion for that support. Marion is a longtime channel legend, by the way. Marion said, "You guys rock, Slava Ukraine, LSA, and Herum Slava."
And you rock, Marion Deemer, and Slava Ukraini, Herom Slava, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And I got to thank you so much for being an absolute legend of the channel, an old guard, and helping us to keep this thing running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here. We wouldn't have been able to been here for a long time. And I got to thank you so much, Marion Deemer, for being one of those people who stood with us through the dark ages of the channel, which was from all the way from October 6th of 2023 up until February 15th of 2024, literally the day of my birthday, which is pretty funny. A great way to really end the dark ages, bring in the golden age, was on my birthday. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much for sticking with this channel, because through thick and thin, people like you and BC Skyman have been here with us the entire time. And I got to thank y'all for never losing faith in this channel, never losing faith in our news coverage, our abilities to get this news out there, and our dedication to doing this every single day of the week. We do this 6 days a week, and even when we're not running a live stream on Monday, we're getting geared for the next week of streaming. And not only that, we're still putting out short war videos like the one that y'all all watched. Well, not all of y'all, even more than just all of y'all watched yesterday, that's gotten up to 270,000 views. So many of y'all have been here with us the entire time. And I get to thank folks like you, Marion Deemer, for being one of those people and still sticking the course with us as we continue to do what this channel was meant to do, which was to cover the news from around the world and also focus on pro-Western interests. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we're jumping into our next one here. And also, let's see here. And also, no, I saw someone in the live chat say, do you have to super chat to get a question answered? I think that's what they were saying. I think it believe is what he's saying. You don't have to. You can put a question in and put @Enforcer Matt in the live chat, and we'll add it to our spreadsheet, and we'll most likely call most of them off before the stream ends. You don't have to put in a super chat. But moving on to our next one here, we have a $20 donation from David Henry, and huge shout out to David for that support. He said, those crazy Ruskies, I think someone needs to remind and explain to them that the U.S. is not a no-kill shelter. Oh.
Oh, no. That was like, oh, yikes. But I thank you so much for the support. And I would agree that the Russians need to be reminded America is no joke and nothing to play with. I think a great way to show that would just be send some limited naval vessels out towards the Russian fleet and just have them sail alongside. Or if it ever looks like the Russians are getting close to territorial waters, possibly ram one of the vessels. And when I say ram, I don't mean a direct side-by-side ram. Maybe just gently tap the side of the vessel with the bow of one of ours, just to get the idea across that we would mean business. Not that we would actually be going to direct blows. That's more so of a diplomatic maneuver, even with it being a direct military maneuver. But nevertheless, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for supporting helping this channel to keep on running, because Russia should be in fear of America. The only reason they really aren't in fear of America is because they have thousands of nuclear weapons behind them. If it wasn't for that, I think they'd actually be in true fear. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also real quick here, we got a poll question to address. It says, were you watching the Enforcer channel before Matt or after Matt joined? It looks like 55% were after Matt, or AM, and 45% were before Matt in the times of BM, which sounds quite terrible, actually, when I read it off. But anyways, I honestly call cap on these poll numbers, because there's no way that 50% of the people answering this poll were here before me. Like, no way possible. I'm calling cap.
I mean, I don't know, Matthew. It sounds like a lot of them have been here for quite a while. I mean, quite a good while, quite a good minute, quite a long.
Although
time.
only 250 people have answered the poll, though. We got like 6,000 people watching. I think a lot of people are staying silent. They want their anonymity.
Maybe they want their enemy. I don't know, but we'll find out one way or another. And also, I know I said anonymity. It is anonymity, but I say anemone because it's funny. But anyways, with that. Thank you so much once again, Matthew, for running that poll and letting us take a look at the polling audience. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to The Planet is Dying. Oh! Who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much to The Planet is Dying for that support. And right now, the planet is living, thankfully. He said, can Ukraine take Crimea now that the Russians military is leaving the area? And love you guys, and thanks for the information and the accurate news.
And thank you so much for the support and the kind words as well. And thank you for enjoying the accurate news. But to speak about Crimea, they would not be able to take Crimea because the Russian army is leaving, because the Russian army is actually out of Crimea further north in Kherson and Zaporizhia, and the Ukrainians would have to defeat those forces first to make it to Crimea. So while they are evacuating Crimea, it doesn't mean that it's in direct threat of invasion, and that does not also mean that the Ukrainians would be able to easily take or capture the Crimean Peninsula. It would still be incredibly difficult for them because they have to deal with the Kherson Zaporizhia area. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And let's see here. Before we move on to the next one, by the way, thank you so much once again for support and asking a really good question about Crimea. I'm seeing a lot of people saying, I was in here when, and a lot of people were in here to remember the night of Moscow Mike, which was also the night of the Great Schism, which was a wild night. It was a wild night all around because we got Moscow Mike on, and then at the same time, the moderators of the Discord server conducted a schism. And if you are familiar with channel lore, a schism is when moderators of the Discord server, and really, to be like, also, by the way, there are some survivors of the second schism from the mod staff who are still here. Huge shout out to y'all. Y'all were real ones, and I gotta thank y'all for sticking with the channel the whole time. But back in the day, though, the moderators of the Discord server, because the Discord servers that we had at the time were massive. I mean, they were, I think the largest one we had about 8,000 people in it. I mean, they were truly massive Discord servers. And for some reason, I don't know what it is, but a lot of people who would get the Discord mod role ended up acting like they had like actual power, like they became vassals in a kingdom, and they were like the lords, and I was the king, and the lords could try and band together and try and strong arm me to do things that they wanted me to do on air, or else under like the threat of some kind of force, or they'd destroy me or something. So the first schism happened that night while Moscow Mike was on air. So got Moscow Mike on, got Moscow Mike off, and then the schism started. And that whole deal was horrendous. I was having to constantly get on and off air, dealing with that, trying to shut them down, remove them. And so finally, what we did over time is that we restarted the servers. We got a second round of mods, and these mods said, "Oh yeah, we will stick with you through thick and thin. You know, we're not gonna do what the last ones did and try and strong arm you into how to run your channel or anything." And then they ended up trying to strong arm me into how to run my channel as well, because they didn't like one thing or another, which is like, it's not really their position to say whether they like something or not. You know, it's like, it's my channel. I'm the one who's spending about 60 hours a week, 70 hours, who knows how much, running this thing. So why?
You remember I was in the background like advocating for like a Stalinistic purge. I didn't like them at all. Like I could tell like their attitude was not good, and I was like, we need to get rid of them now before it gets like to be a worse problem.
That was
we were like dealing with it like on a geopolitics level or something. I was like, deal with it now or let it fester until later. I was like, deal with it now. Do it now.
And, well, actually, that was the first schism when you were like that. And then the second schism was coming around, and you and me both saw that it was going the way of the first schism. You know, because we started to hear those little murmurs in the background, and we were like, well, we've got to seize control of the situation immediately and then start crushing this thing. So then that's when because at one point, and I knew that this was not a good sign, they went off and made an independent Discord server that was not owned by me, meaning that, you know, if anything went wrong, a house could be cleaned. So they made a second Discord server that they ran, and so then I went over there and I was like, hey, I need the ownership transferred really quickly. And because they were trying to make sure to, I guess, keep their cover going well, they gave it over to me, and as soon as they did, I deleted it. Like, I just deleted the Discord server immediately because we already knew what was going on in the background. And not only that, to add a little bit more lore for people who know who the Hot Dog Man is, apparently Hot Dog Man had put several plant moderators in our server, that we just picked because we were like, they seem pretty chill, they seem pretty all right. But the entire time they were plants, and the whole entire plan was to eventually disconnect that server from us, try and make the Lee Spring Army sound like it's just some random internet community that popped up that had nothing to do with this channel, and then end up stealing all of those people from that Discord server over to Hot Dog Man's channel and make them subscribers and followers of his stuff. So this stuff has been going on for an incredibly long time. And so then we dealt with that schism. We got rid of those moderators, and then at that point, we decided that the Discord servers were too much to handle, and we shut all of them down. We literally just completely deleted the servers, and then from that point forward, we decided that Discord servers were nothing but hell. Every time we make a Discord server, we can't moderate them all day, every day, and so, you know, we would have to have moderators, and then moderators would always end up going down that path because it happened twice, and then we would end up having to deal with it, or it ended up causing damage to the channel. And so we were like, you know what, better just not to have Discord servers. And that's why now for about a year and a half we have not had a single Discord server that's officially affiliated with the channel, because I'm just not dealing with that kind of drama. I'm here to cover news. I'm here to do what we do on YouTube. I'm not here to start playing politics with, random moderators. That's really crazy to me. But with that, I hope that does address that story the best I can, and also kind of addresses something that a lot of y'all were around for, which was the night of Moscow Mike and the first Great Schism. But with that, with that, I hope we were able to cover that story greatly. I'm making sure to reread the chat here. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And then after all the mods were gotten rid of, we were left with one sole mod to do all of their jobs into one, and that's me. Man, all of those mods that we had, what was it? How many was it in total? Like, was it like 5 or 6 or something like that? Main ones?
I think, let's see. I think it was. I think there was it was a pretty big staff of them, because I remember especially in the second server got so big that we actually had to end up stratifying the mods. So there were people right below us. I think there was like 6 of them, and then each of those guys had like a mod staff of 3 each, and then below them, each of those junior mods had incredibly junior mods, pretty much like the rookie mods, and then they had like 3 of them each as well. So it was actually like an actual command structure. I believe we would have had like an entire company of people who were working on that server as moderators. Some of them ended up getting through, like May Celisay, who's still here. He was actually one of the junior moderators in that, and he's a real one. He's stuck around through it and dealt with it all.
Oh yeah, Mace, yeah.
And a couple other ones did as well. But a lot of them were backstabbers, and it was very interesting to see, because they were huge, a lot of them were huge fans of the channel and what we were doing. And then you give them Discord mod privileges. We are still doing the same thing that we were doing when they were big fans and they weren't mods, and then all of a sudden they want to start disliking stuff and telling us how to do things. And it's like, how in the world does that happen? You know, it's like, we did not change. We are still the same people we were. You know, at the start, we're still doing the same thing we did. So what in the world?
You know, it reminds you of that song. It reminds you of that song. You know, it goes something like, they smile in your face while they want to take your place. The backstabbers. You know that?
Oh
one?
yeah. It really is.
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
song. Yeah. Like, it really is.
The cringiest dad joke ever. I tell you what, I had to do it though. It was in my head. I was like, I gotta say it. I can't just like go without saying it. So there you go. Also, I see someone there saying the hot dog man versus the enforcer in the cage.
Oh man!
Listen
I
now.
realign his jaw.
if you're the type of person, I'm not saying I'm judging anybody or nothing like that, but if you're the type person to get severely injured playing softball, you shouldn't threaten people. Let me just put it that way. If you're that fragile, you shouldn't be threatening people because you're not realigning any jaws. Trust me, it's not working. But anyways,
also, if you take fanciful hikes through the forest, I don't really think you're someone. Like, I'm just saying.
Oh yeah.
I don't really think you're someone to be talking. You know what I mean? Like, no. Like, and like, I don't talk because I'm not one to trash talk. It's really, well, I trash talk people, but I don't trash talk with like that kind of like a physical thing, because it's like, why? You know, it's an actual crime to do that. That is, I believe, what would that be? Menacing, assault. What would that be, Matthew?
I don't know, like maybe just stupidity.
Something like that. But it's not a smart thing to do, and also it makes you look like a coward when you say something like that and you don't follow through. I'm purely a defensive person. I'm not gonna go out of my way to start a fight with someone, but if someone starts a fight with me, it's not like I'm just gonna sit there. Especially with some 5'6" crackhead. You know, it's like the crack may have fried him, but I'm about to fry him even more. Like, it's about to be like an omelet up in here. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so we're jumping into our next one here, which goes to Destiny Edgington, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Destiny, for that support. They said, can Ukrainian sea babies reach the Russian fleet in the Atlantic?
No, sadly not. The Sea Baby would not be able to reach it, because I believe the Sea Baby only has a few 100-mile range, meaning that getting to the area around Istanbul would be tough. And also, those Sea Babies would have to navigate the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, go through the Mediterranean, and then into the Atlantic, and then all the way around Europe into the Baltic to try and strike at St. Petersburg, or even further up into Murmansk and Arkhangelsk to try and strike the fleets up there. So it would be impossible for them. That's way out of Ukraine's drone striking range. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, thank you once again for support, Destiny Edgington. Good question. And I hope that that answered it fairly well just by the mere distance. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for continuing to support this channel and helping it to keep on running.
Indeed. And our next one here goes to Wubba, who puts in a $20 donation. And big shout out to Wubba for that support as well. He said, old guys, he said, old guard rules.
And the old guard does rule. But, I want me some of that fine brilliant blow. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible, help to make it a reality. And I got to thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel, Webba, and supporting it and helping it to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And the old guard wouldn't be able to be the old guard, because the channel wouldn't have lived long enough for it to mature into the old guard. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Howard Turgell, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout out to Howard as well. He said, Taco Tuesday. Wait a minute. It's Taco Tuesday. It's Tuesday. Oh my God, man. I was trying to do like that Orange Man impression, but that went sideways. I can't do any impressions tonight. I don't know why. But it's Tuesday. That's what I was trying to say. I'm shocked. Like, how the hell is it Tuesday? I thought it was like Friday or something like that. It's kind of weird. I didn't even know what day of the week it was at this point. But huge shout out to Howard. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a huge shout out to Howard. And thank you so much for supporting Taco Tuesday. Taco Tuesday is a great day. We actually had Chick-fil-A today. Kind of breaking the Taco Tuesday rule. But we need to have tacos on Tuesdays. And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Howard, in helping us to have that taco fun. So that way, when the next Tuesday comes around, we can have a taco. Because I like tacos. I think they're good. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And our next one goes to Radical of an Integer Information Activity, the very scientific name, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much for that. They said, Patch is on the way. LSA. He said, thank you, equal Basinga Basinga. And they keep dropping all that wisdom on us enforcers. You're paying attention in such detail and keeping us in the know. LSA.
And thank you so much, Radical of an Integer. And I love to hear that the patch is on the way. We're very happy to hear that. And I got to thank you so much for getting a patch and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing possible and make it a reality. And so, thank you so much once again. And thank you so much for enjoying the detail we go into. I try and read up as much as I can and understand what I'm talking about at least a little bit. So that way when I get on the air, I'm not just reading the bullet points that other people put out earlier in the day. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Richard Philpott, who puts in a $10 donation. He says LSA is SLA spelled sideways, sorta.
And, maybe. Maybe. I don't know what SLA stands for, but yeah, LSA kind of does look like SLA spelled sideways. Sort of, kind of. But still, thank you for the support, Richard, and pointing that out, because I will have to look at that a little bit more and inspect it, just a little bit. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so the next one goes to Monsieur Gaston, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Monsieur. He said, hello there, some plums, please.
Oh, wait a minute, did he say plums?
Plums,
Oh, hello there!
Oh, crap, that scared
it's
the hell out of me.
Marmot.
Whoa, Jack's the Marmot, hello.
Oh, hello there! Would you like a plum, Governor? Or better yet, would you like a rock? Or you can have something to have in the back. Some thick, juicy cake, Governor.
Oh! Bump truck, Jack, whoa!
Oh, man, I like to take long hikes through the woods. That's a little suspicious, isn't it? Like you said, that's just a little bit suspect, isn't it? But beyond that, I gotta say, it is absolutely incredible, Monsieur Gaston, that you said there was a plum to be had. Because the Marmot is the Marmot. I mean, it is an absolute legend. Alan the Marmot is a real Marmot in this picture by Jacob Lugosi. I believe that's his name. Or Jacob Lugosi. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Lugosi. I'm going to call him Lugosi because he be guzzling. Oh! But beyond that, it's still...
Man.
Thank you so much. Dude, you know when I do that, it sounds like I stepped on a Lego, man. Like I'll just be talking normally, then I go, oh! It's like that. But beyond that, thank you so much for the support, Monsieur Gaston, and helping this channel to keep on running. And Matthew, do you have anything you would like to add for the Marmot?
Oh, hello there, Governor. would you care to explain how you get injured playing softball of all things? If you're playing hardball, that might make some sense, but softball? Oh my, this is a dreadful thing. A dreadful thing. Put it to the fly. What's he gotta say? Oh man. Oh, if only I could get a couple of thousand, that would fix all my problems. Oh man. Oh, gets up and runs out the wheelchair like a scammer.
Dude, he's like that guy who said that he was a cripple gamer or something like that, and he was in a wheelchair. And then like at one point he just backed up the wheelchair for a second and literally just stood up and walked out of frame. And everyone was like, "Wait a minute, did he just walk?" And then he came back and everyone was like, "Did you just walk?" And he was like, no, I fell out of the chair. Like, you didn't see me walking away in the background. Like, no. But that really is it. Could I have a couple of G's? A couple of G's for it. Could I have a couple of G's for a trip? Could I have a couple of G's for medical bills? Could I have a couple of G's? Because why not? That's all. Could I have a couple of G's for hot dogs? Like, it was a deal I couldn't refuse. Where are all these G's going? G. And also, how in the hell do you afford a brand new computer and still say you don't have enough G's and a new apartment? G. But you know, it's a good question. They're great questions. Questions we'll never get answers to. And whenever we, you know, that was something funny though, Matthew. I just simply asked a question. You know, one time. Well, better yet, I actually made the statement. Dang, airplane tickets from America to Poland are really expensive. They're like $5,000 round trip. How in the world does someone get the money to do that? And just asking that question in general, he slandered me. Like, it's like, I didn't even say it about that guy. Dude, you know, like, I'm just saying, I'm not saying anything, but I'm just saying, when you call someone out, now that is the reaction to someone being called out on something that actually is questionable, is when you sit there and point out, wow, that looks like that's absurd. How in the world does someone do something absurd like that? And then instead of responding by actually giving an answer, even though the statement wasn't even directed at them by name, instead of doing that, they go, oh my God, he just slandered me. Oh my God. It's like, okay, then we must, like, chances are that might be on to something. But I need a legal fund. That was
Put it back on the marmot real quick. Put it back on the marmot. The end all statement, Governor, is you'll do what you're told.
Oh, that was.
And I'm telling you, shut your mouth.
Shut your mouth, Governor. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. Thank you so much once again, Monsieur Gaston, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support, Monsieur Gaston.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Joseph Lantham. And thank you very much, Joseph, for that $20 support. And he said, what would a North Korean versus South Korea conflict look like if it happened at the same time as a Taiwan invasion from China?
Let's see. The United States would be involved most likely in both of them, so a lot of our focus would be over in Asia. There would probably be a pretty substantial naval conflict going on, and we probably would also see that the Chinese would join the North Koreans on land as the People's Liberation Army, which is the actual name for their army. It's two armies, one after the other. Would not be really doing much at that point. It would most likely just be the Air and Navy operating around Taiwan for the Chinese at that point. So they most likely would get involved pretty heavily in Korea against the United States. So it would pretty much end up being World War II, like the same geographical area that World War II was in East Asia, but just in the modern day. That's kind of what it would look like. And you would have the North Koreans and the Chinese on one side, and then you'd have the United States, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan on the other, most likely including Australia and New Zealand as well, along with the Philippines, and maybe Vietnam, although I think Vietnam may peace out and remain neutral. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope I was able to address that question incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Radical of an Integer, Information Technology Activity once again, who puts in a 10 this time, and says, Lima Sierra Alpha, Lima Oscar Lima, and also Foxtrot Tango Whiskey.
And thank you so much for saying the Lee Spring Army for the win. I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to read incredible messages like that off. It is truly amazing. And I got to thank you so much once again. And let me make sure that I was reading that correctly. So I want to make sure.
LSA, LOL, FTW for the win.
Okay, good. Yeah, it was. It was that. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address it well. And thank you so much for enjoying this channel, that you find it worthwhile to support and help it to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Heather Fitzgibbon, LSA, who put in a $10 donation, along with Starboy Righteous. He is righteous, and he puts in a $10 donation. And thank you, Heather and Starboy, very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you both, Heather and Starboy, for the support. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but the support is absolutely incredible. And I gotta thank y'all once again for enjoying this channel enough to support it and help it to keep on rolling. Because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Belgorod, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much for that support. He said, hiya. Nobody expected the Mexican LSA. Oh, well, we did, though. We have the Mexican LSA. It's already existing. And he said, probably Enforcer is not even aware, but there have been reports of targeted cyber attacks against pharmaceutical entities in both Russia and Belarus lately.
Interesting. And Burbo, you are correct. I'm actually not aware of that. That usually would be out of the scope of the war, because with that, that's more so partisan activity, which while we do focus on it a little bit, we focus on it as it directly pertains to the ground conflict. So I actually do not know anything about that. And I thank you for sharing that with me, because I'll be looking into that a little bit more and seeing what kind of damage is being caused and what kind of possible consequences the Russians could face because of pharmaceutical entities being attacked. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for support, and thank you, Burbo, also for being a part of the Mexican Lee Spring Army, which is really cool. Like, it's actually really cool to know that there is a Mexican part of the Lee Spring Army. I mean, you got all the cool places in Mexico. You've got the Baja Peninsula. You've got the Sonoran Desert Institute in Sonora. Oh. You've got Chihuahua, where the little rat dogs come from. Listen, if you like them, that's good. I just don't like them, me personally. I'm sorry. So you got Sinaloa.
You know that guy from Australia. You know that guy from Australia that did that dog impersonation? You know him?
Oh, yeah.
We need him.
But anyways, beyond that.
He was a vicious devil, and he came out from behind the barn, and he said,
dude, and then we got Sinaloa, which is known for many incredible things. And then we got Durango, which I honestly like the name of Durango. That's actually a pretty cool name. Also, what does the town of Durango look like?
Looks like a Dodge truck.
Let's see here. I want to actually see. Not that bad. Dude, coming from Cuba, it's like nothing looks terrible. It's like everything's great. It makes Alabama look great. But yeah, I mean, this is a pretty nice place right here. And so then let's see, what else do we have? We have Zacatecas. We've got let's see. Nuevo Leon, we got Tamaulipas. Let's see here. But we got Hidalgo, which is a pretty well-known one. Then you got Mexico City. And I don't know how to directly say that one, but Mexico City is within the state of no. It's actually just within Mexico City, yeah. So, and then let's see, what else? There's Yucatan, which is very commonly known here in America, and Campeche, and Tabasco, which is actually where the Tabasco peppers come from that get imported to America, to the McElhenney family in Louisiana, and then they turn it into Tabasco sauce. That's actually where the peppers come from in Mexico. And then you got Veracruz.
You know that they actually named the whole company after that region, like Tabasco. They not only is the pepper from there, but they named the whole company after it.
Yeah, like because that's like really where the whole business came from, was from here. If it wasn't for those peppers in particular, that business would not exist. And then you got Veracruz, which is actually a pretty freaking big region in Mexico. Takes up about a third of their eastern coastline. But what's really cool about Veracruz is that the port of Veracruz is probably one of the most important ones in Mexican history. But pretty cool overall. I don't know why I'm taking you around, Burbo, on a tour of your own country and telling you history that you probably already know. But still, Mexico is pretty cool. It kind of gets dunked on a little bit in the States. But to be honest, it is pretty neat. Not only that, Mexico is our biggest trading partner at the moment globally. So it's good to know a good bit about them and how their country is running. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Burbo. I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for helping this channel to be possible and helping us to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also chronically alien. So I thought they came from Louisiana. I think Tabasco gets in peppers from like a bunch of different places, including Tabasco in Mexico. But they also grow some of them on Avery Island, I think, in Louisiana. I think they do. Like, it depends on where the peppers come from, and they mix them all together into like a similar, like a, what do you call it, like a congruous batch or something like that. And they try to make it taste consistent across the whole lot. But it tastes pretty good to me. It's a little too hot for my liking, but it's pretty good. But anyways, moving into our next one here, we have a super chat from Herp Derp NV, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Herp Derp, for that support. They said it's been a long time since the last Hood review, and let's see, he has an exact address here. This could be sketchy. Let me pull it up real quick and make sure this isn't a home address or anything like that. Let's see here.
Man, we about to pull up and spin the block, my boy. Like, give us that address.
Let's see, Google Maps. Paste. Let's see. Okay, it's just an innocent street. Oh, maybe not innocent, but it's a street. Let's see. It says, let's do 2012 North Lindale Avenue, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Ho ho, Jack!
Oh,
a city known in culinary circles for having America's most salty wieners, and also known for having the most stupid YouTuber that's ever existed.
Oh, wait, I was like, is this the street? Like, I was gonna be like, is this it? Nah, I don't think this is it. But let's see here. By the way, we know, it's just that this isn't, like, this isn't it. Checks Cash Drugstore. Now, that sounds like my kind of bit. The liquor store! Hey, we're saved, Matthew, we're saved! Like, we got the liquor store. But let's see here. What else do we have? So we got Super Cash, Check Cashing. We got Cricket, and
Cricket.
And then we got Sanctuary Resource Center. Gee, I wonder if Hot Dog Man's in there right now. Oh man, my sciatic nerve. But let's see, what else do we have? We got City. That's about it. But beyond that, we drop down right on the address, right here. And I'm not seeing anything but a liquor store, a Broadway winner convenience store, and a Salvation Army. What else is in this city? What else is in this city? Let
me see here.
The north.
You know, there's a part of what is it? Minneapolis? Is that the city? Yeah, Minneapolis. Yeah. There's a part of it that's, I think, to the north that is somewhat nicer. It's somewhat like an undeveloped area. I think it's called Blaine, either Minneapolis or Minnesota. I think this Blaine might be a city, but it's a pretty nice place, pretty new up there.
Let's see, Blaine, Minneapolis. Where is that? Oh, look, it's up here, right up here, Matthew, right?
Yes, it's in that area.
Wow, that actually is like pretty posh looking if you look at that. I mean, there's a whole bunch of little subdivisions that have been built up around here. I bet you it's expensive to live in this part of the city.
Probably so. Probably pretty expensive. Also, it's pretty newly developed, like everything out here. Like, it's brand new and all that good stuff. Brand new apartments being built pretty much everywhere.
And you know the rent's
it's very nice. It'd be a luxury to live there.
Oh, dude, you know.
Oh yeah.
Like you would probably have to have thousands of dollars coming in a month just to pay rent. I mean, you would have to have that kind of money. It would be crazy. But let's see here. Where in the world? So there's a load of suburbs out here. Let's see, and then there's a highway going through, and we got the top 10 liquors. Dude, apparently Minnesota's big into the juice, like the fun juice. Because I've never seen this many liquor stores, I'm not going to lie. Like, apparently you just have a fun time all the time up there. Oh, look! The Blaine Baseball Complex. I wonder if they got softball fields out there, Matthew. I wonder. But
I wonder. Also, by the way, there's an interstate going along the road. I was looking up there, I was like, I might move to this city someday. I don't know. I've never been to it, so I couldn't tell you if I like it a whole lot. But there's a brand new apartment block right off the interstate. It's called the Lexi Apartments.
No way.
And I was like, that is so nice. Like, those apartments are so nice, like nice balconies and things like that. And also, there's a Jersey Mike's, like, and a Culver's, like, literally right near it. So it'd be super convenient for food and everything. Also, a very nice shopping center as well. I just thought it was so nice. You got the Loch Ness Park up there to the north of it and all that good stuff. This is great. And P.O. Box is very close by.
Man, gee, dude, that sounds like one hell of a deal. I mean, like, if you get in a place like that, you'd have to be pretty set. But I don't think, If you were something like that, though, I don't think you'd be a scrapper, you know, a real trash talker. You know, living in a posh place like that, you just couldn't be. You know, like, you'd have to be a pretty civilized person. Maybe pop off in the mouth here and there, but, you know, beyond that, you couldn't be too much of a jackass. But, let's see, man, like, Loch Ness? Like, so they have, like, an actual monster in the lake somewhere around here?
Yes, they do. It's over toward the right, toward the interstate over there. Like, scroll in a little bit.
Let's see, over to the right near the Centennial High School. We got that.
It's up by the Home Depot. You missed it. Go up a little bit.
Up by the Home
Go
Depot.
down.
Oh, yeah. So let's see here. I mean, this is not that bad of a place. Look at this. You got everything you need right here, just in this one little spot. And then there's
right there.
And then there's that Loch Ness Lake. There it is. That's where the monster is, right there. And what the hell is an infinite campus?
I'm not even sure.
Now, that's actually kind of cool.
Oh, that's nice.
Wow, dude. Like, dude, you know, property values in this place have got to be primo. Like, you like to have something like that. You got to have some primo kind of quality here. And then you got Yalta. Dude, you got the damn Yalta conference going on over here in this part. But let's see here. You got Michaels. You got all kinds of cool stuff up here. You know, I'm telling you what, you'd have to be kind of a little lucky, you know, to be in this place. I bet you it'd be expensive. You'd be under a lot of pressure to pay that rent, Matthew. I mean, you'd have to do anything to pay that rent. You know what I mean?
Anything.
I mean, absolutely anything. I mean, the sciatic nerve. Oh my God. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. But man, this place up here, I forgot even what that Blaine. I mean, that's a pretty nice place, folks. Make sure to look around there. But Herb Derp, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And thank you for letting us take a look around Minneapolis, Minnesota. We make so many jokes about Minnesota on this channel, not because we hate Minnesota, but just because this channel is so involved with a particular bad element from Minnesota. And it's just terrible to think that it has gotten a bit of a bad rap on this channel for that reason. But Minnesota looks like a pretty nice place. And I gotta say, Matthew, that it's just so posh. I mean, it's insanely posh. It honestly looked better to me than Birmingham, Alabama, which is one of the nicest places in Alabama. I mean, it's crazy to me. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for support, Herb Derp NV. I hope we addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Brian Perkins, who puts in a 10 and says, take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, Brian Perkins. And also, no hard feelings. I'm sorry. I know my tone got a little bit off sounding. Not meant at you. Just meant at the concept. But still, thank you so much once again. And we will make sure to take one from the live chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one is going to go to Anonymous, who says, what do you guys think is the mission of Putin when he visits North Korea soon? Could it be weapons?
I believe it most likely is a continued trade agreement for weapons, or a growth of that trade agreement. It's not going to be to get the North Koreans directly involved in anything, because meetings like these rarely ever result in action like that. So I would believe it's most likely for more weapons in exchange for more Russian food. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one also goes to Burbo, yet again, who puts in another $10 donation. And says, if you ever want to see Latin America's finest, look for Amazon's Tijuana, Mexico warehouse. They built the warehouse. I know what he's talking about, by the way. It's like it built in a slum. He said they built the warehouse a few years ago in the middle of a neighborhood called Cartolandia.
Oh, yeah, here it is. This is it.
It's like dystopian.
Oh, my goodness. Let's see if we can find it. Oh, there it is. It's right over there. There it is. So you get so just to explain this to y'all, Tijuana is not really that prosperous of a city, especially compared to what we would view in America as being a prosperous or even a downtrodden city. Tijuana is pretty rough off, but Amazon built a massive distribution facility here in Tijuana, and literally right in the slums. Like, you're looking at legitimate actual shanty shacks outside of the Amazon warehouse that is right there. And I believe there's another one right down there from it too. So this is probably as bad off as it gets appearance-wise. And also, I like the two little cat statues, or the dog statues that look like they're cleaning themselves. A real fine addition to the slum. But beyond that, yeah, not the greatest thing. But also, look at the industrial area around it. I mean, the industrial area in Tijuana is huge. I mean, look at that. It's massive. It's
It is
never
crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty much the entire northern end of Tijuana. It's right across the
I'm just
border.
trying to figure out why Amazon would build a like nice high-end warehouse in the middle of a place looking like that. It's like, do they really think that's going to go good for their company image, like building such a brand new nice thing right in the middle of a sort of rough area like that?
They probably don't care, because in the end, a company is there to make money, and they don't really care about public image too much unless it becomes disruptive. And it doesn't
They
look
could
like
have. Go ahead. I'm sorry. There's a delay.
No. Go ahead. By all means.
I was going to say that they could have at least like help fix up the area before they built there, like try to fix up and help the people around the thing instead of literally like pushing them back and then literally building like the brand new thing right there. It's like that was a little bit of an interesting choice if you ask me.
Yeah, it was. And also another thing that's really interesting. Check this out. Let me drop y'all down in a neighborhood in Tijuana. This is what your average neighborhood in Tijuana looks like. Honestly, not that bad. And then here's what the American side looks like across. This is actually what you would call the southern San Diego metropolitan area. And we'll just drop down at a random neighborhood here. And it doesn't really look that different. I mean, Tijuana and southern San Diego kind of mesh together into being one and the same. And of course, you'll see that there's a lot of photo ops out there. This is a very common thing to make it look like the American side's paradise and the Mexican side is hell. But in reality, it's not always like that. Of course, some neighborhoods will be different. And let me show you one around here. This is right on the American-Mexican border. And I believe the border is right down there. Yeah, there's the wall. Right there, the border wall that divides Mexico and the United States. So this is what the Mexican side looks like. And then if we hop right across the way to the closest thing, which is a small little suburb right here at on this road, Camino de la Plaza, you can see that it looks a little bit nicer in this neighborhood. This looks like a higher-end neighborhood than the one we were just last in. And then you can see Tijuana right over there across the border. And you can also see the border perimeter wall right there. And that's also a little bit of an interesting thing as well, is that usually throughout most areas of the U.S. border, there is some kind of a border wall or a border perimeter. It's usually made out of some kind of a fencing element. It's not like a solid wall, but a significantly large fencing element. So, pretty neat to look at and really wild to see, especially when you see that, like, for example, with Tijuana, how they lay out the city. Like, look at the road layout in Tijuana, which I'm guessing that they don't have that big of a city planning commission. And then you can go to South San Diego, and you can see that the road works are a little bit more formalized into grids and different kinds of laid out structures, because there's a higher amount of city planning that's done when these areas are built. Although city planning and zoning laws are a little bit weird, I'm not going to lie. And they also greatly limit what can be done with available land. Nevertheless, there is more planning effort involved than what we see down in Tijuana, where you can see that the roads seem to be a little bit haphazard. In some areas, a grid was built, and then in others, it was just kind of freeform, like throughout most of this area around Francisco Villa. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Also, no way. Wait, we got to look at this, Matthew. Let's see. So wait a minute, hang on. This is
no empathy. Why would somebody write that on the wall? Is that interesting?
This is the International Airport of Tijuana, and literally right across the street, this is the border perimeter wall. That's actually pretty wild.
That is kind of wild. That's the airport's actually somewhat nice.
Dude, the airport's incredibly nice. And then you got this little breezeway that crosses the border. What is that a part of? Let's see. Huh, so apparently you can actually use the Tijuana International Airport from the American side.
Is it like a border crossing?
Maybe. Let's see. Is it? I'm very interested in this now. So apparently,
oh yeah, it is.
Yeah, apparently it is. You can actually just walk right across the border. Like, you can land in Mexico at the Tijuana airport, and I'm assuming if your papers are correct, you can just walk right over into the United States because that was your end destination. Or if you're trying to fly out of the area of Tijuana, you can park over here on the Mexican side, well, on the U.S. side, walk across the gangway to the Mexican side, and then hop on a plane and go flying off to wherever. That's actually pretty wild. I didn't even know that there was an arrangement like that in this area. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And also another thing, one more thing before we move on, about this area, about Tijuana and all that. One thing that's really interesting is that the cartels, speaking of cartel operations, actually conduct a decent amount of shore hopping operations in between Tijuana and San Diego. So the Coast Guard is always heavily involved in between the Isla Coronado, the area of the Mexican coast, and then also the U.S. coast as well, trying to find and intercept semi-submersible really like cartel subs pretty much, although they're not really subs, they're just low visibility vessels or LSVs, and also a whole bunch of other stuff that is making its way up to San Diego or out of San Diego. And another interesting thing is that a lot of the Coast Guard folks that are stationed in this area actually say that there is a decent amount of killings that happen on the water, and some boats, like fishing boats, sometimes will just drift over into American waters, and there will be 2 or 3 dead people on the fishing boat, most likely just, whacked by the cartel, because that's how they run their business. But nevertheless, pretty interesting stuff happens in this area around San Diego. But we could talk about this all day. But still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope we were able to look at that pretty well and add some interesting comments to it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Barry Woodward, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you, Barry, very much as well. Hey. He says, to replace your tungsten bot glove and bye-bye bot, biatches.
And thank you so much for the support and giving Matthew a tungsten bot glove, because he always appreciates it. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Notorious GRG. He is notorious. And he puts in a 10 and says, Notorious ain't got no G's. I got 2. And it ain't for no hot dogs. If you know what I mean. I don't get it, but I'll have to have somebody explain to me. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, he said. It's for you guys, for the fun. And sorry I haven't been giving. Things have been crazy here. Me.
Oh, it's fine, Notorious GRG. We're just happy to have you here on the stream. And I got to thank you so much for the support. And I got to thank you for enjoying this channel and helping to keep on running it. And thank you for supporting our hot dog fun. Because while we do trash on hot dogs aren't that bad from time to time. I find them to be somewhat enjoyable a little bit, just not hot dog man. But still, thank you so much for supporting the fun. We will put that towards something fun, hopefully. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, Notorious GRG. And also, Matthew, before we move on from that one, how many super chats do we have left?
Let's see. We have 10.
All right. I was wondering, because just in case y'all are wondering, why is he wondering? It's not that I'm trying to rush. It's just that I did not have enough coffee tonight. I know maybe people were like, how can he just not measure this out? The coffee ran out, so I wasn't able to really get a lot, and I'm falling asleep right now because the coffee just did not last. So I was just wondering, how many more super chats do we have left? We're going to address these 10, and then we're going to move on into our live chats, and then we're going to round out the stream. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Radical of an Integer Information Activity once again, who puts in a 6. And thank you very much. He said, Sierra, India, X-ray.
6? And I got to thank you so much for the $6
$6
support and helping this channel to keep running. Because folks like you do help it to be possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and our next one goes to Paramecium 13, who puts in a 5, and says, do you know how someone could send a message to those Russian ships near Cuba?
Sadly, I would not know. You could always try the old light method, where you just shine a light at them and then move something in front of the light to block the light, and then you can send Morse that way. That's the way that old vessels used to communicate back in the Second World War sometimes, when no radio contact was allowed, and also other times throughout history. But you could do something like that and communicate with them. It's just that you would have to get out there to the vessels in the first place and then start doing that. But you could communicate with them that way. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wyatt Logan, who puts in a 5 and says, Enforcers, as always, thank you for your hard work. And thank you, Wyatt, for the support. He said, I'm happy something special happened today at work. I got a raise, and congratulations, by the way. He said, unlike the last time I saw Chris's mom.
Oh my goodness. Sideways. Oh my lord. And that one hit me out of left field, man. I was like, oh my lord. But still, thank you so much for the support, Wyatt Logan. And if you are serious about getting a raise and it's not a part of the punchline, congratulations on getting a raise. And also, thank you so much for enjoying our efforts and our hard work on helping this channel, making this channel possible and helping it to keep running, because we put our heart and soul into this every single day, every single week, and we will until it's over, which will probably be when we're dead or when we're moving on to something else, like when I start moving on into actually getting into politics. But that's not here and that's not now. But still, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Robert Johnson, who puts in a 5, and a huge shout out to Robert for that support as well, and not leaving a comment. But thank you very much, Robert, for that 5, and we appreciate it very much. And we also have a 5 from William Gorman, who says first time donation, and hey, LSA forever. And please take a question from the chat from me.
And thank you so much for the support. Thank you for supporting for the first time ever. And we will make sure to get one from the chat sponsored by you. And thank you so much once again for supporting this channel for the first time ever. And so with that, Matthew, what we got for a live chat?
And this one goes to Julian Brett, who says, do you think if someone tried to invade the U.S., we could form militias larger than most countries' entire military?
Yes, we could. Would they really fight well? No. Because they would lack the prerequisite support that modern infantry require to really function well. But as far as just sheer numbers go, yes, we could actually raise an incredibly large armed force. Let me see how many registered gun owners in the U.S. Let's see. However, so American citizens, it seems as though, sadly, there is no actual estimate on the number of citizens that own guns in America, because according to what I'm finding online, and some people that follow our channel will be able to tell me if this is correct or not, but the AI overview that Google gives, which I'm kind of doubting here, says it's difficult to determine the exact number of gun owners in the United States because there is no federal requirement for firearm registration, which I feel like is
let's go!
I feel like that's bogus because the Form 4473 that I have to fill out with the ATF tells me there probably is a registry. So
there's not a central registry. It's not central, not yet.
It will most likely eventually become. I feel like that's just an inevitable certainty. But let's see. Around 22% of individuals report owning a gun. So approximately there's 72 million people in the United States who actively own a firearm, according to the best estimate. So going off of that, considering that the largest army in the world right now is the Chinese, and I believe that they're around 2 million strong, the U.S. militia, if you wanted to call it that, the U.S., well, we would actually have to call that the federal militia, because I would assume that well, actually, no, it would be the state militias. The U.S. state militias, if the state started to raise militia forces to fight an invader, if the Chinese dropped down 2 million guys in the United States, we would outnumber them about 35 to 1. Just with the militias alone. So we would actually outnumber every single armed force on the planet right now if you just took every armed citizen and flung them at something. Which is kind of what Mao Zedong did with the People's War, or Mao Zedong, whatever you want to call him. But that's what he did with People's War as a concept in China. He just gave a whole bunch of people guns and threw them at people, and it worked a little bit. Didn't work that well in Korea, but beyond that, that's what he did. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Hugh, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much, Hugh, for that support. He said, what are your thoughts on the ideas that with Russia so weak, now would be a good time for China to attack, with Putin seeming to keep Xi out of the loop?
I would say that wouldn't be so. A lot of people always ask this question. This is a very commonly asked question in the war. The Chinese do not want to get caught up in the administration of Eastern Russia. They already get the resources and materials that they need from Russia at extremely cheap prices, and not only that, Russia is now becoming an ally of China and becoming a minor member of their sphere. This means that hostile actions against the Russian would generally be discouraged because it would end diplomatic and economic discourse or really cooperation in between the two, which would not be beneficial for the Chinese. Also, the Chinese are not an offensive country. Like when I say that, like they are, like sometimes they are offensive on a governmental level, but as a nation in how they fight wars, all the way up until recently, with the Taiwan situation, their war fighting style has always been purely defensive, in defense of their nation. It doesn't even allow for preemptive military actions until recently. And those preemptive military actions that are the exceptions are aimed directly at Taiwan, and Taiwan only, meaning that the Chinese would never eyeball Russian eastern lands as a potential target because they're not a, well, at least according to their philosophy that's publicly known, they're not a violent expansionist country seeking to claim more territory. They're more so an underhanded violent expansionist, seeking to indebt nations to them permanently and then create a major sphere through that indebtedness to multiple different countries. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Russ Rizzo, who puts in a 5 and says, do you know most marmots are highly social and use loud whistles to communicate with one another, especially when alarmed? From Wiki.
And thank you for the support and sharing that with us. And Matthew, the marmot goes, I know that. Would you like a plan?
Man, that's what it does when it sees that cake.
Man, dude, the marmot be sitting there. I know that. Sees Miss Marmot pop up. Would you like a plan? It's like, it's like, watch out. But anyways, still, thank you for the support. Thank you for sharing that with us and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who helped make this thing possible. And thank you for sharing that with us, because I didn't know that about marmots. They're very social creatures. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Russ Rizzo yet again, who puts in another 5 and says, now we make Russia pay. EU to transfer first monies, 1.6 billion in frozen Russian assets, and what will be the first thing you'd buy for Ukraine?
If I was given that money, the first thing I would buy for Ukraine is an endless amount of artillery, particularly ammunition for the artillery. That would be the first thing I'd buy with that. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to LSA Master Sergeant Figment, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, Master Sarge, for that support. He says, Russia needs to get away from my fishing spots.
And they do! Get them away! And it's still, thank you for the huge support, LSA Sergeant Figment of this channel. And also, I just wanted to let you know that we did receive your gifts today in the mail. Matthew got his challenge coin, and
thank you.
We were absolutely stoked to get it. I think that the patch that you sent of the 35th Israeli Airborne is absolutely incredible. It's really cool to have it, and we got to thank you so much for sending the stuff, because it means a lot to us when folks send us very personal gifts like this. We can't thank y'all enough, and I can't thank you enough, LSA Sergeant Figment, LSA Master Sergeant Figment, for being a big part of this channel. Now, you become a big part of this community and supporting this channel and helping it to keep running, and also giving us a little bit of a connection, to at least, by other means. But with that, thank you so much once again for. By the way, I only said that not to discredit you, LSA Sergeant Figment. It's just that there are people who do watch this channel that we know in person, that are actual, like, we actually hang out with them a good bit, that are friends. And it says no data. What the hell's going on here? Oh,
yeah,
we're lagging.
Just a minute.
Oh God. Okay, so we're back. But anyways, we actually have some friends that we hang out with in real life, that are actually from the Middle East, which is actually pretty cool. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Thank you for making it possible, and thank you once again for sending those incredibly neat little gifts through the mail. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, we're getting blasted on the internet. I don't know what's happening, but can you hear me?
Blasted. Oh yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Oh yeah.
All right. So our next one here goes to Jackie Ward, who puts in a 2, along with Tushka, who also puts in a 2, and also Blitz as well. Huge shout out to all 3 of you for that support, and huge thanks for helping to keep us running. And we also have one more. This one is from Philip Fix's LSA, who also puts in a 2. He says, long live the LSA, and check out Bithelo, Florida, by the park.
And let's check out Bithelo. How do you spell that?
It's Bithlo.
There we go. Bithelo. You said Bithelo. I was typing in Bithelo. So let's see here. So let's drop down.
Lag.
Oh God! Let's drop down. Oh great heavens! It looks like Florida. Great heavens! I need to get to the hairdresser. But anyways, it looks nice. I like it. I'm not gonna lie. I ain't gonna diss it. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. It's in Orlando. In Orlando. Where is it in Orlando? Actually, it's really close to the coast, kind of. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep them running. Thank you for letting us take a look at this. And also, I know y'all are real ones because you got that Tractor Supply Company. They usually have those little baby chicks in there somewhere. At least back in the day. They do! There they are. But they used to have baby chicks in some of our Tractor Supplies where we were growing up. But then they got rid of them at some point. I was really disappointed in that. But still, with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does. I hope that does address that well. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that is actually our last super chat. So we're now moving into our live chat questions, and our first one here is going to go to Plexus Gaming, who says, is Ukraine taking advantage of the partial Russian pullback from Crimea?
Yes, they are going to most likely be striking more Air Force and naval assets in the area now that the air defense is being pulled back. But at the moment, we haven't seen attacks directly related to that lack of air defense. We actually saw that the last attack they conducted on Crimea was directly at the retreating air defense systems. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And Sergeant Carnage said, do you have any details on the sub that's down there near off the Florida coast?
We know that it's a Yasin-class fast attack submarine, which are a little bit of a newer submarine. They are capable of traveling at a speed of around, I believe, 40 knots submerged. Here is a side profile of the Yasin class, and then here is a picture of one moored at its harbor covered in ice, because, you know, the Russians don't really have any warm water ports. But beyond that, let me see here. So, wait a minute, here we go. We can actually see the ones that are under construction right now, and these are planned on being completed throughout really the entirety of the decade. But beyond that, the ones that are currently in service right now are the Severodvinsk, the Kazan, the Novosibirsk, which I believe is the one that's down in the area, or it's the Krasnoyarsk, that is down in the area around Cuba right now. It's either the Novosibirsk or the Krasnoyarsk. And let me see here. Really quickly, does it say anything? Let's see. She was in service, so that one was fairly recent. Maybe the Novosibirsk. Maybe it'll be mentioned here. Nope, not mentioned there. Maybe it's the Kazan. Yeah, it's actually the Kazan that is the nuclear submarine that is currently down there. But much like the rest of the submarines, it is capable of the exact same speed submerged. That's what's concerning about these submarines. And not only that, they are nuclear powered, which does mean that they're a bit more capable than a diesel electric, at least in staying submerged for long periods of time. But that's all I would really know off the top of my head about this submarine. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Epi, who says, so with Russia visiting Cuba, it kind of reminds me of the Red Dawn situation. Would you agree?
A little bit, but the thing with the Red Dawn one is that Mexico had actually become communist or something along those lines, and so they began to stage, and it was a kind of like a semi-realistic concept in the original Red Dawn. They began to stage Soviet forces in Mexico, and then using commercial flights, they landed VDV and Spetsnaz in America, and also just dropped them out of the back of the commercial airliners after they hijacked them as paratroopers onto the United States, which sowed chaos behind the lines, which is a pretty solid tactic. That's what they did in the day. And so the tactics that they put, well, the strategy that they used in the movie was pretty realistic to what they did with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, which is what the movie was kind of based off of. It was like Red Dawn, the original Red Dawn was the concept of what if the Mujahideen were not fighting in Afghanistan? What if the war was in America and the Mujahideen were Americans? That was kind of like the concept of the original Red Dawn movie. And so I would say yes, a little bit, but the Cubans, like I think even in that movie, the Cubans kind of played a little bit more of a minimal role. They were kind of just like supporting the Soviet troops that were in the area. But yes, I see what you're saying with that. And I would say that it's a little bit similar, a little bit. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, and this one is going to go to AF Kaplan, who says, if the Russian ships near Florida cross into U.S. waters, what can the U.S. Navy do to respond?
They can fire warning shots at the vessels. They can fire directly onto the vessels. But they most likely, like, Well, if the ships plot a course that looks like they're heading into U.S. waters, we'll intercept them before they even make it into U.S. waters. We'll tell them that what they're about to do is violate U.S. Territorial waters, violate the sovereignty of the United States. They'll be ordered to turn around. If they do not turn around, warding shots will be fired. And then if it looks like their entry into the waters of the United States is imminent, then they will be directly fired upon. That would generally be the method of approach that the Navy would have to vessels that look like they're about to violate United States territorial waters. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to Maurice, who says, do you think Russia would be giving Cuba anti-ship missiles to mess with the shipping routes?
That's a good question, actually. I have not even thought of that one. And you're actually a genius. They might do something like that, maybe. But once again, it would be a diplomatic maneuver. The intent of giving those weapons to Cuba would not be that the Cubans would use them. It would more so be that they would threaten to use them, and then that would start to draw the United States into a diplomatic lurch of a sort. So yeah, I mean, they could be doing that. That's actually a very interesting way to draw everything into a diplomatic I guess you could say crisis more so, without having to provide weapons that would directly attack the United States or nuclear weapons for that matter. So that was a very interesting one, and that may be what they decided to provide the Cubans if they gave them anything. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Brad Dietrich, who says, do you think Ukraine will take advantage of the Russians leaving Crimea and trying an offensive there from the shore?
I don't think so, because the Ukrainians wouldn't have the ability to support a major offensive. We do have to remember that they would have to travel all the way from the area around Odessa, past Russian coastline, to make it to the closest area at Chornomorsk in the Crimean Peninsula to try and land. Not only that, the Ukrainian Navy is non-existent, meaning that logistical support abilities would not be there. So you would drop these guys off, they would run out of supplies, and then there's really nothing to do rather than pick them up and take them out. So while they may conduct raids like they have in the past on Crimea, a larger naval invasion or an amphibious landing of Crimea would be untenable for the current Ukrainian Navy and army that exists at the moment, and there would be no way to support or follow through with the initial landings that would be conducted by Ukrainian forces. So I'd largely say no. I think Crimea will remain Russian for a while, and if the Ukrainians do take Crimea, it will be by offensive action, which breaks through the Russian lines in Zaporizhia, or the more unlikely option at this point, it seems, of them breaking through the area of the Dnipro River and then racing towards Armyansk. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream at exactly 3 hours and 30 minutes in length. I've got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. It has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to cover this news for all of y'all tonight. Shockingly enough, there was 11,000 people on at the peak tonight, which is insane. There was actually 11.1 thousand at the peak, which is unbelievable. I cannot believe that we even got that high of a number of people here. And not only that, 89,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. And I gotta say to all 11,100 of y'all that were here live at a single time, and to the nearly 90,000 of y'all who have watched this stream since it started, we are entirely honored and entirely humbled to know that all of y'all pick us as your source of news. We are absolutely... It's really mysterious why in the world everyone comes to this channel. There's many other channels that do this and cover this kind of news, but nevertheless, we are the only one that tops the top 100 charts in the United States every single day for live stream viewership, particularly covering this war. I gotta say that we are incredibly thankful for that. I don't even really still understand why so many people watch this channel. I'm sure many of y'all will say why in the live chat, but beyond that, I gotta thank you all so much once again for watching. We are just unbelievably grateful that you all picked this channel to watch. And if you're new to the channel and you did enjoy, please make sure to hit the like button, make sure to comment, and make sure to subscribe. And not only that, if you're an international viewer and you wanted some LSA patches, make sure to go to officialenforcerstore.com. The link will be in the description tomorrow on the next night stream, and probably in the short war video tomorrow as well. But you can get LSA patches now. They are sold in 3 packs to international viewers only for the entirety of this week, starting today and then ending at Saturday at the end of this week. So if you want some, get some. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and it is time for us to end. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. And once again, thank you all for another great stream. And we'll see you all on tomorrow night. And of course, tonight was a massive stream with 90,000 viewers hopping on. And we are very grateful. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava. We'll see you all tomorrow. Get some rest and good night.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards